can type your name so that we're able to know who we are with. There's also someone else who has logged in with iPhone. So if it's possible, put your name. If it's not possible, then you're going to understand. So unless there's anybody who has some preliminary comments, I would want to go to the content of this training. So allow me to share my screen. I believe you can see my screen, right? Maxi, I hope you can see my screen on your side.
Yes, I can. Yes, it's clear.
Thank you so much. So as we are all aware, is that we are having this training on the 360-degree feedback. And this is something that most of us as HR professionals, I can say it's an emerging kind of feedback. So, and I believe that's why we're all here, so at least we can get to understand what it is and we see what we can do to be able to implement it. So for these sessions, we'll have some objectives as highlighted below. So the first is to explain what 360-degree feedback is all about. We need to understand the history. Where did it come from? And what are the uses of this 360-degree feedback? It's always good to know the advantages and the disadvantages of any tool that you're using. Then we'll also discuss on what is an effective 360 feedback appraisal. What are the components that you require for you to have an effective appraisal? We'll explain the process of this feedback process. We'll also describe the problems of the 360 feedback appraisal. We describe the sources of errors because we all know in every system there'll be one or two gaps, so we're going to do that. We're also going to discuss and explain the development options after the feedback, because having a good system is one thing, but what do you do with the feedback that you get? Then just as a rider, we're also going to discuss the 720-degree feedback for us to see where we are headed to. So I'm sure the objectives look like there are many, but what we've done for us to be able to really grasp and to get to understand is that we've broken the objectives into tiny segments so that each segment we're able to explain in such a way that all of us are able to understand. And if you allow me, if it's okay, I want to remove my video, or you want to see me as I talk. Is that okay, guys? Can I remove my video?
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. So we go to the first objective, which is the introduction. And the introduction starts with a very interesting dialogue. And I'm sure most of us have been involved in performance appraisal. And maybe just as an icebreaker, can someone tell us what, when you think about appraisal, when you hear performance appraisal, what comes to your mind? It's open. Anybody can tell us what they have in mind or what they think about that.
I think it's an evaluation of performance of an individual.
Evaluation of performance of an individual, yes, right, thank you. Someone else with a different answer?
Can I try?
Please do.
Yeah, I think on top of an evaluation of an individual, it goes further to look at the performance gaps and recommend possible interventions.
Lovely. Performance gaps and possible interventions. Excellent. Thank you. And maybe just to prompt all of us, I say in adult learning, all answers are correct. So don't shy off, just say what you have. And like we said, we keep on learning from each other. So the last comment, then Beck can go to the intro.
Let me try.
Thank you.
I think in addition to what my two colleagues have said, it's an assessment of an employee's performance against a set expectation, set standards, set targets, or set objectives, and also an assessment of any challenges that the employee might be going through that they might need to bring up for intervention. Thank you.
Awesome. True. It's an assessment of set standards and assessment of challenges. So as you've all said, then I'll tell you what I have on my slides. And just for us to know that we are all trainers, is that all that we've said is correct. And I want to start by what people think appraisal is. And I'm sure you've had these conversations because all of us in one way or another are also appraised. And one of the things that will happen is you hear somebody say, I think our supervisor is biased against me. Because as a human being, how we are nurtured or how we are wired is that you believe you have the best, you believe you're giving your best. So when it doesn't go according to how you'd expect, there will always be that element of biasness. So this is a statement that you'll always hear. And we have two colleagues here, David and Kyle, having a very interesting conversation. And Kyle is asking, why do you think the boss is biased? And he responds, because he thinks he's performed very well throughout the year, yet he has not given me the correct rating. He rated me as satisfactory. Then Kyle is asking, so did you discuss with him in the feedback interview? And he says, I did, but I'm not satisfied with his explanation. From this conversation, you can see clearly that this employee is not happy. And he believes that his rating was because the boss does not like him. And like we've explained and said what a performance appraisal is whereby you're looking at the standards, you're evaluating the performance of this person. This person believes I've done the best. However, because he has a perception or he believes that the boss does not like him, then he's very clear that his rating was not satisfactory. He believes he should have rated more than that. And David gives a solution and says, I wish this rating was done by many people who know me and my work apart from my supervisor. Because he believes if it was not his supervisor alone, then the rating would have been higher, the rating would have been more objective, and he would be more satisfied. And from that conversation, we come to our training of the 360-degree feedback. Because with the 360-degree feedback is whereby it's not just about one person. There are many people who are going to appraise you. And like we've defined their performance appraisal, as opposed to one supervisor, whereby me as an employee, you as an employee, you are the mercy of that one person. Then we have various people who can be able to evaluate you and come to a compromise, because if one person is biased, then definitely the other person may not be as biased, because I don't think it's possible to have like 10 people who are biased over you. And that is why then we come to the introduction of the 360 feedback degree. And now we're going to go into the process. We're going to understand what it is, just to confirm that whatever we've said performance appraisal is actually what it is. So at least we are all at one point and having a clear understanding as a team. So what is performance appraisal? Like I asked earlier, and I think this is all that we said, it's a process that evaluates the personality, performance, and potential of the employees. And like one of us said that you assess the challenges that we have. Because somebody may have a challenge that is actually preventing them from achieving their potential. It's also a process of evaluating and communicating to an employee on how they're performing on their job. So it is a process of communicating. Communication is very key, because what happens is some of us HR professionals, and especially when we want to sell performance appraisal to the supervisors, for them, they don't look at the communication element. They think it's a documentation, they just write forms and they give you forms, no communication whatsoever. However, a proper performance appraisal needs to have the communication. And as you all know, communication is two-way, from the employee side and from the supervisor side. Hence, we can say it's a system of review and evaluation of job performance to assess the accomplishments and to evolve plans for development. Where there are challenges, what can we put in place to ensure that this person, this employee, is able to harness their full potential? We further get to understand that you need to evaluate employees' current and past performance relative to his or her performance standards. What are the set standards? Then we evaluate them. Then according to Newstrom, they say that it's a process of evaluating the performance of employee, sharing that information with them and searching for ways to improve their performance. Further, it said, it is a step where the management finds out how effective it has been in hiring and placing employees. Because you agree with me, you can hire the best. And we all know at times you hire someone, you're very sure, you have all the hopes that they're gonna perform, but when they come on the ground, it's a different story. So through an effective performance appraisal, you're able to know, you're able to rate yourself as a HR professional. Did you hire the right people? Because one, you have the set standards. Are they performing as per your expectations? Therefore, it's recommended that in addition to the annual formal performance appraisal, informal performance appraisal should be conducted 2 or 3 times a year. This is a recommendation, but different organizations have different kind of the schedule of the performance appraisal. And what I tell HR professionals is that we need to tell the people that performance appraisal should be a daily process, whereby you're giving feedback. Because the other challenge that comes up is that you find the performance appraisal that we undertake. For the last, I'm given my objectives in January. I will never sit down with my supervisor until June. So at that point, there's so much to catch up. There's so much that maybe I've been going through. Maybe if you had a discussion with that employee, let's say in February, the challenge that they're having, you'd have discussed about it, you'd have empowered that person, you'd have mentored that person, coached, or put mechanisms in place that will enable them to perform that objective. So I always encourage that let's ensure that our performance appraisals are continuous. It's a daily thing, but not the formalization is where we go as per the schedule. Because that way we'll be able to ensure that our performance management system is not compromised. Because as we all know, performance appraisal is part of the broad performance management system. So as HR professional, this is normally our process, and how we manage our process is what determines the success of it. So for us to be able to really appreciate that, it's good for us to understand the broad performance management and why we need it in our organizations, in our places of work, in what we do every day. And in terms of performance management, we have the objectives of it. And like I said, this is a system, and performance appraisal fits into this system. One is to review the performance of the employees over a given period of time. Like I said, you have to define the times. Are you going to be doing it quarterly? Are you going to be doing it monthly? And especially for some people, you'll have like a month, let's say if it's a sales team, you need to have some monthly evaluation. Are you going to be doing it quarterly? Are you going to be doing annually? So you really you need to define it. And this is going to help judge the gap between the actual and the desired performance. Because what we do is that we know what we want and where we want to go. But in between here, we don't do anything. So that's why we need to have a very effective performance appraisal or performance management system that is going to ensure that between the actual and the desired, the mechanisms that we're putting in place are effective enough and all employees are aware of it for us to be able to achieve it. It also helps the management in exercising the organizational control. I believe that we all know that organizations have the objectives. So how are you going to meet them if you don't have a good performance management system? It helps to strengthen the relationships and communication between supervisor, subordinates, and management of employees. Why does it do this? Because there's the continuous conversations. And like they say, the more you converse with somebody, the more you get to understand what they are going through. The more management is able to tell the employees, this is where we are in terms of how we're performing. Because as we all know, even as an organization, they should have a performance management rating card of like the balance scorecard, whereby you're telling the employees, this is where we are. That way, all employees feel they're part of it, whereby the appraisal is not just about the junior people, even the organization as itself. And the moment you do that, the employees feel part of it. It helps to get to know the strengths and the weaknesses of the individuals. And that once you identify, you're able to identify the training and the development needs. Because like you said, an employee maybe have the potential, but they just have one gap. Maybe they're very good, assume like it's, maybe it's a supervisor. They're very good in what they do, but their people skills are wanting. So what do? Then you put into place a development program that is going to build this to upskill them and be able to achieve whatever you want to achieve as an organization. It's also a way of providing feedback regarding their past performance. I'm able to know as Irene, how did I perform? Was it good? What do I need to do? It provides information to assist in the other personal decisions in the organization, because an organization with a going concern needs to be making decisions. Like now we know there's so much that has changed in the recent past. COVID came and so much changed. So if you don't have a very robust performance system, how are you able to go? How are you going to be able to make decisions? So that is why it's very critical. It provides clarity on the expectations and the responsibilities of the functions to be performed by the employees. I, as Irene, know what I need to do when I come in the morning. Nothing is frustrating like as a HR person. You walk into any department, you ask somebody, what objectives are you running with? And they have absolutely no idea. So that tells you as a HR professional that you're not on the same ground, because some people are headed west, others are headed north, because they're really not clear of what the organization expects from them. Of course, it reduces the grievances of the employees. Why? Because they know what they need to do. It's clear. They know what I'm expected to do. When I come in the morning, this is what we're achieving. This is what I need to have achieved. Because when somebody doesn't achieve, the supervisor gets frustrated and will be like, guys are not working. But it's because they don't know what they're supposed to do. Maybe you know it, but you've not communicated to them. And one of the things I'll tell you, my dear colleagues, is that for an effective performance management system, communication is key. And communication should be both ways. Of course, the other objective is that helps to judging the effectiveness of other human resource functions of the organization, such as recruitment, selections, training, and development. It's very good in terms of rating. As we go further, you'll see how you can be able to rate your specific HR functions. So with a good performance management system, then you're able to see the effectiveness. Are you adding value to the business? And like we all know, in most organizations, is that they look at HR or human resource as a cost center. So you really have to show your value, because they believe all you're doing, your support, and you're just bringing in costs. So the way you're able to show your effectiveness, if you have a robust performance management system and you're able to support that business, then one, you're able to show the value of you being in that organization. And that is only achieved when you have a good performance management system. So what is the process of this system? For us to ensure that we have a good performance management system. One, and like you can see, I said it's a continuous process, very continuous. Let's not start a process and wait for the 6 months. It's very continuous, and it should keep your HR people busy every day by checking if things are going right, by checking if people are doing the right thing. Because if they don't do it right at the setting of objectives, then trust me, when you come to evaluation, you'll have a lot of grievances. You'll have a lot of stars who are saying, I don't believe in my score, like David and Kyle, the discussion that they had. So one, it starts by setting and communicating performance standards. What is expectations of the management? What is expectations of the supervisor? And this communication, like I said, it's two-way. We agree, you sit down with an employee, let them understand this is what is expected of you. Measuring the standards. You've set the standards. How are you going to measure them? And like we all know, we have the acronym of SMART. Let it be SMART. Let it be specific. I know what I need to achieve. We have this training. We have 3 hours. This is what we need to achieve. Have measuring standards. How do you measure that standard? When you give an objective to an employee, how are you going to measure it? Because if you don't have a good measuring standards, then at the point of you evaluating, then you'll have a crisis, because you'll have your standards, the employee will have their standards. I come in at 8 o'clock, I leave at 5 o'clock. How can you tell me I've not been performing? You see, yet for you as a supervisor, you believe they've not been performing. Maybe they come in at 8 o'clock, they're on phone for another, but if you don't have a clear measuring standard that can tell somebody, I expected 80%, you've given me 70%. There's no discussion, there's no grievance that will come out of that. So kindly ensure that you have clear measuring standards, comparing standards. How did you perform in Q1? How are we performing in Q2? Last month we recruited. The turnaround in terms of recruitment was 3 weeks. On this recruitment, we did 1 week. On this recruitment, we did 3 days. Compare the standards and ask yourself, which works best for us? Discuss those results And at the point of discussing, you're involving the employee. And the moment you involve them, they start owning the process. And the moment someone owns the process, then trust me, they become part of it. And they feel, this is me, this is us, and we are working together in this journey of whatever standards you're trying to achieve. Take the corrective standards. And like I said, once you compare your standards, we did this on this recruitment, we did 5 days, this we did 3 days, this we did 3 weeks. The moment you compare, you're like, why did this work this way? You'll be able to have corrective standards in place so that you have the best objective that will work for everyone. Then you plan for performance. You plan the performance, identify and communicate the performance goals, establish the performance criteria. Like I said, you need to understand what it is, the standards, the performance appraisal period and the methods. What methods are you going to use? If it's your recruitment, how are you going to measure that recruitment? Because you can have a recruitment, you want to measure the turnaround of recruitment, but you have no tool to measure. You can't even tell when the advert was channeled out. You can't tell when the people were interviewed. Do you have a tracker? Do you have like a dashboard? Have the right tools to be able to measure that standard. Examine the work that was performed, appraise the results, and of course, conduct the appraisal interview. And for you to be able to achieve that, what are these things that we need to anticipate and consider? One, problems of the performance appraisal. And like I said, I need to have a recruitment turnaround of 5 days. Nobody told me it's 5 days. So for me, as an employee, I'll just go with the pace that I believe in. So I'll do it like 2 weeks. So when you sit down with me as my supervisor and tell me, why did this recruitment take long? But you didn't tell me. You didn't tell me I'm supposed to do it for 5 days. So very important. Then how do you support me? How do we support our employees? We do that by coaching them. Maybe I'm not very good at managing a tracker. Coach me as my supervisor. Train me and develop me. I may be having very poor interview skills. That's why I'm not able even to shortlist accordingly. Don't take that as a weakness. Take that weakness and develop it to become a strength. Because I always tell people, you're where you are because somebody made you to be who you are. So coach the others and you give them the support. Whereby you feel you need some training, then the management will be there to support you. So as we progress, it's good for us, as we summarize on that, to understand the key components of performance appraisal. And I believe this is more of what I've just been talking out of CAV. So like we can see, we have the colleague, both client feedback. This is what in terms of appraisal, you want feedback. Everybody wants to know how I performed. What do my colleagues think about? What do the clients say? If it's about customer service. In HR, we know we offer customer service to the business. What is the business saying? And have candid and objective discussions with your colleagues, with the staff. If one department is not happy about a specific recruitment, if they're not happy about a specific training, let the team get to understand, because you're offering customer services to their business. Employee accomplishment summary. I need to know what I've achieved. Everybody wants to feel they're achieving. Let's review the goals and accomplishments. Let's have objective performance feedback and appraisal meetings. Like I said earlier, in case there's any challenge, there's any gap, let's develop learning plans. Let's have a schedule. What are these soft skills that I feel that in case I'm empowered, then I'll be able to perform more? Goal setting for upcoming year. Let's know what we want to achieve next year. Yeah. Merit recommendations. Let's always give positive. When people perform well, let us tell them. Everybody wants to be rewarded. And I always say, a reward is not just about monetary. Even telling somebody, thank you, that was good. I mean, that recruitment went so well. The performance appraisal system went so well. The program, I mean, just tell people they're doing well. And trust me, you'll be surprised the effect of just appreciating people, recommending people, giving them positive feedback. It really does magic. The overall performance summary is very important for you in HR to get to understand. And just like I said earlier, some indicators for us as HR, because I know at times you come into some discussions with some HR people and they're like, how do I put SMART standards? How do I put SMART objectives? And we have so much. the list is endless. So this is just a few of what we can use in case we want to measure the performance of our employees. The employee productivity. We can look at average sales turnover per employee. Yeah, something like that. Average profit per employee. Because I say one of the things we as HR at times are not very strong is when it comes to metrics. Let's also tell them, let the business also understand that we understand the business. And I tell HR people, for you to be able to manage an effective performance management, you have to understand the business. Don't just think about HR, the typical personnel management. Think about the business. Give them terms that they'll be like, wow, understand what I'm doing. Go to that meeting and say, I want to present the employee productivity for Q1. Talk about the value add per employee so that they can see the answers, so that they can see the value that you're bringing to the business. Talk about the employee cost as versus the sales turnover and the profit of the organization. Or however the business or however the organization objectives are. Try and tweak something that will show the business that for real, you're adding value to it. Because that is the only way you become a partner, and that's the only way you become part of it. And when you go with your training budget, they'll be like, wow, there's some value that you're bringing on the table. Employee turnover and loyalty. This is whereby you have like a standard, you're saying the percentage of employees that leave the organization in a given time of period, and the average length of service. How long are our employees? Or are we employing people then we think and you find like your average length of service is 3 months, it's 2 months, it's 6 months. I mean, yet you can be able to, there are some organizations that you find it's 3 years, 5 years. Those are the tough discussions that you need to have when you sit on that table. So these are just part of the key performance indicators that we as HR can be able to embrace them. On the recruitment process, like I said, I think I can't emphasize it further. We want to lead the lead time to recruit employees. The average cost of recruiting employees. Do you know how to calculate it? Can you be able to calculate your time? You're the supervisor, you sit in an interview for 3 hours. Are you able to compute your salary? And you're able to say, but for us to recruit this person, this is the amount of time that it took. And you equate that to a value. The average number of applications received per vacancy. This is very, very important for us HR people because one, it helps you know how is my employer brand. There's some organizations when they apply, when you advert, the adverts are so many that they can't get over them. There's some organizations when you place an advert, you only get 3. That speaks volumes because it's asking you as a HR person, what you should be asking yourself hard questions. Is my employer brand not very marketable? Or what is happening? Because there'll be people out there looking for jobs. But how comes when I place an advert, nobody's applying? So these are the kind of questions that you need to have and ask yourself about. So these are the kind of standards that we can put in place. So there are many employee career coaching. Do you have a coaching program in place? And if you have, what are the numbers of the employees that have been assessed? Do you have an assessment center? Yeah, the skills, competence, availability. So all these are just some key performance indicators that we can use to measure performance for people whom you're supervising. Training, very important. Once you have your training budget approved and you take people for training, then how are you going to show that it actually worked? Because at the end of the day, if people make an investment, they want to see the return on investment. So if it's training, have an indicator on the impact of the training that you undertook. If it's a specific department that requested for some training, and it will ask them those hard questions. You want to see the impact so that at the end of the day, when you go to the table, you're able to justify your budget. And how can you measure that? One is a difference, the percentage difference in terms of the rate of productivity before and after. Very important. The difference in terms of the defects rate before and after the training. Proportion of the training programmers resulting in productivity improvements. Yeah. And when you show those metrics, then someone is able to tell for real, is it worth investing in this training? Or would you have invested in another training? And is this training the right training? Because like we said, performance management is a continuous thing. So maybe this is just one of the training to help them get to where they want to be. So even if it's not going as it's going, this rating will help you as a HR person to be able to make a decision, an objective decision, like I've taken 5 people for this training, I have seen the impact, so I need to take more people. So kindly let's always ensure that we have the performance indicators, and like I said, they have to be measurable. Employee satisfaction, something that all of us now currently are being encouraged to have to do it. We want to know how our employees, are they satisfied with what they do, or they just come to work for the sake of coming because they have to earn a salary? We want to get into a system whereby people are coming because they enjoy what they do. So those are part of the things that we can use as indicators as HR people to be able to measure the performance of people who are reporting to us, and also help the other line managers in terms of setting these objectives, because they look at us for advice, they look at us to support them. And this is very important, even as they set those objectives, for you to be able to have an effective system, have a look at them before they start implementing, because it's very frustrating after a supervisor has set the objectives to the best of their knowledge. Those are the best objectives that they could. Then come 6 months down the lane, you'll have a look at them and you realize they're so broad, you can't even measure them. So kindly let's have these interactions and ensure that as our line managers are setting the objectives, we are all, and we've given them the support that they require. And with that, then we come to the methods that we can have in terms of performance appraisal. And like we said, we're just discussing the broad understanding of the performance management, because by us understanding that, then when we go to the specific, the 360 feedback process, it will help us understand further what we're talking about. So the process that we have, or the methods that we can use, there are various methods, excuse me, there are various methods, and you pick what works best for you. And I always tell people what works for company A may not work for company B. So for you, is for you to look at what works best for me. If it is an organization that maybe you're just introducing a new system, don't go to very complicated performance appraisal methods like management by objectives, or something that is so out of this world that they don't even understand. Go to very simple things. Start with a checklist, something that they'll understand. That let it grow gradually, because people want, we call it the training curve. Don't start a performance appraisal and you have like a performance appraisal tool that has like 10 pages. I've seen performance appraisals that have 10 pages. If you're introducing a performance appraisal and I'm new, I've never heard about performance appraisal, and it's 10 pages, trust me, that pulls me off. So let's start simple, especially if you don't have that system, then gradually improve on the tools that you have. So we have various methods, so you pick what works best for you. So in terms of the objectives that we have, we now want to get specifically to what our training for today is. That is a 360-degree feedback. And why I had to have that discussion or have that introduction in terms of performance management is for us to clearly understand where we are coming from. So before I go to the next objective, I just want to ask, is anybody who'd want any clarification, or anybody who'd want to add something that maybe I may have left out in terms of us understanding the performance management system? Over to you guys. The floor is open. Anybody with something to say? Rose? Or Benjamin? Benjamin, can you tell us something?
Yes, yes, Irene, thank you. Good morning.
Morning to you.
In terms of performance management system, we've been doing in our organization, but it has been yearly, half-yearly, and yearly. But the issue is when we do the performance appraisal, we rate the employees, but at the end of the day, they come and say, so you've rated that the whole year, or even half-yearly. So there's no bonus out of it. Or you've told us you've not taken us for, or you've trained us, but we don't see it tangible. So what is specifically the objective of this performance appraisal or performance management in an organization? How can we motivate the staff so that they can continue to be appraised, or even appreciate what the supervisors appraise for them? Or what is the end result of this? It's like it's a zero-sum game at the end of the day to some of the organizations.
Thank you, Benjamin, for that. Anybody would want to respond to Benjamin before I give my views on that? We said we are learning from each other. I'm sure some of us here have been involved in the performance management. Anybody would want to respond to that? Judy, you want to say something about that? Judy, are we together? Jane?
Still mulling over his question.
His question is that they have a performance management system. However, it's like the staffs are not motivated because they don't see the essence of the performance management system. And what he's asking is, what is the value of the performance management system and what can they do to motivate their staff so that they can embrace the system?
Can I try?
Sure.
For me, I would say it starts with how the performance management system is introduced to the organization, because the underlying factor is that it should be participatory. So the staff should be well involved, especially in setting targets, so that they are part and parcel of it. Because at times you find that apathy comes when people feel this is something strange and imposed on us. But if it is well participatory, people are able to understand what is the essence of it, I think there'll be better absorption and participation in the whole thing, in that it's a discussion, it's a give and take, it's agreeing what is actually doable, and you are actually feeling that you contributed and you are part of the parcel of the decision making. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And your name, please?
Robert.
Robert. Thank you so much, Robert. I agree with you on what you've said in terms of having the employee participate. And maybe to answer Benjamin, one of the things that when you find that employees are not embracing anything that you introduce, in most cases is that they feel they're not part of that process. They feel that this is something that has been brought to us, and most of them feel you want to fire them. They feel it's something that is coming just to get the wrongs. However, we all know that performance management is a system that ensures, and if it's well effectively managed, then in terms of growth, both for the organizations of the individuals, you're able to achieve that. So for me, Benjamin, I think I would want to throw it back to you and maybe evaluate, how did you implement that system? Were the employees involved? Did you create awareness? Do they understand exactly what is performance management? Because in terms of performance management, if I don't understand, if I've never gone to class, because at times you assume these people are HR people. They're not HR people. It is you who knows what you want to achieve. So let them get the buy-in. And like Robert has clearly said, if they don't buy it in, trust me, they will be rebellious. So get their buy-in, create awareness, let them understand, have clear and smart objectives. And now those, if I were you, that is a gap that I identify, whereby I think I need to take my team through the performance management system. They need to understand what it's all about. Because once you get it right, trust me, it flows. In terms of the rewards, like I said earlier, most of us, as most employees, look at rewards like monetary. But it doesn't have to be monitored, because when it comes to monetary, then we have the budget constraints, and we all agree, most organizations, by the time you sell a budget, it's not very easy. So look for motivation that are realistic, that you can achieve. If you give me a certificate for being the best performer, have my photo on the reception because of the employee of the quarter, that is a reward that is good enough. So let's look for those rewards that you can be able to implement without having a huge financial implication. However, we know there's some organizations that have adopted a performance management system that is bonus related. So if it has a bonus in it, then ensure it's objective. So for me, Benjamin, I think the honors would be on you to evaluate the performance management system that you have in place, let people get to understand, then define the rewarding system. It can be monetary, it can be otherwise. You can ensure that you can have a bonus, a performance management system that the bonus is actually based on, maybe the annual, but it also depends with the business. Does a business, is it a profit? I mean, it's some of these things are very specific to an organization. And I think these are conversations that maybe we can have as you continue, as you implement the performance management system. When you sell it, what did you sell to the senior management? Because what you sell is what you're going to be able to market to the employees. So kindly just have a look at the whole system and ensure that you get the buy-in. Because the moment you don't get that buy-in, trust me, you get frustrated. So I hope, Benjamin, you feel you've gotten something from us in terms of the way forward.
Yes, Irene, I've gotten from Robert and also from yourself. I think we will try. Currently we are facing a lot of resistance on the same, but it was because of the issue of bonus, the issue of automatic annual increment, and also the person who introduced also left.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. I think that's something we'll pick up. The person who started, I like picking keynotes. The person who left also affects. And what do we do to ensure that we have continuity? Because if as an organization, you don't have a continuity plan, and that comes about when you don't have proper documentation, unlike the communication I was talking about. Because whether you're there today or whether you go tomorrow, there should be that continuity. So kindly as HR people, let's ensure that we have that continuity in everything that we do, and that comes when you have the proper documentation. And I'm sure, Benjamin, now that the honors is on you, you'll ensure that you have everything in place so that in case of anything, people get to understand, because those gaps are what people feel like, they don't even know what they were doing. And you see, the moment people get that element, trust me, it becomes a nightmare. So we go to the next, thank you so much, guys, for that input. So we go to the next objective. And this is where I want to explain what is this 360-degree feedback. And this is where the meat of the business is today. But I thought it's good for us to just understand the performance management. So the 360-degree feedback is an appraisal or assessment process used to improve managerial effectiveness by providing the manager with a more complete assessment of the employee's effectiveness, his performance, and development needs. Key: effectiveness, performance, and development needs. It's also known as a multi-rater feedback, multi-source feedback, full cycle appraisal, or group performance review. So in summary, that is all 360 is about. And when you talk about 360, think of a 360-degree, it's everywhere. Because like you remember our intro or our icebreaker, we had two colleagues, whereby one was saying that he feels that the supervisor was biased. However, in the 360-degree feedback is whereby you don't involve just the supervisor. You involve it's a complete circle. Anybody surrounding this employee. And as we get further, you get to find the kind of people who can be able to evaluate this employee. So in simple words, that is what we can define 360-degree. And different people have different names. So if you hear someone talk about multi-rater feedback or multi-source feedback, full cycle appraisal or group performance review, they're all talking about the 360-degree feedback. And I always tell people, at times as a HR person, it's good to pick these words and use them, when in the boardroom. Just say, you know what, I want to introduce a multi-rater feedback, let them also know that you're also informed, because when you have information, people tend to believe in what you're saying. Because if you're not sure of what you're saying, then getting a buy-in is very difficult. So let's describe and understand where it came from, because everything has a history. We can say that this system has its roots early in the 1940s. You can imagine. Currently, we're in the 2022, so it started in the 1940s. However, at that time, the technique was not very clear. And based on that, most scholars agree that this system has historical roots within the military context. We all know how the military works, And they say, if you want a disciplined person, then talk to the military. So that is why this kind of feedback system is very objective. And once we get to interact with it further, you'll understand why. And they say in the 1950s and 1960s, this multi-rater trend continued in the US within the military, academics. And as we all know, in the military, there's a term they say, check my back, as in, if it starts with the military, they always say, check my back. So maybe this is where it came from. And that's why we are told that it came from there. It's a technique that came from the military. So this is just a summary in terms of the history of the 360 degrees, so that you can see it's not alien. It's something that has been there, and it's something that has been used, and people have seen it as worked. And like the scholars, I'll tell you that most scholars will always ensure that whatever has come in place, they critique to the best they can. So you can imagine this system has been critiqued since the 1940s. So that tells you where we are right now, is that we have the best that we can. And of course, the scholars continue critiquing it to make it better day by day. So specifically, this system provides performance data from multiple points of reference. 360, look at a circle. And I want us to think of a circular. When you look at a circle, if you draw a circle, there's so many factors surrounding that circle. So the 360 is like that. So if it's an employee and you have a circle around them, those, we can call them as the multiple points of reference. And it gets feedback from all those points. And they say it's a very powerful and reliable and accurate as compared to the traditional single source feedback process. The current process and the current performance appraisal that most of us do, it's a supervisor and an employee, single source. But the 360 is from multiple. So if all of us are praising Irene, the view of one person and the view of the other person may differ. But if Irene is being appraised by one person, then their view is a final. And interesting, when you undertake this, since you're evaluating one person, and since, like we said, this is a performance management system, right? The standards are set. They are clear. So you know what you're evaluating. You're not looking at Irene and saying, oh, she's tall, she's short. No, you're looking at the set standards. So if you're looking at the set standards, what one reference will see and what the other reference will see will be balanced in a way, because the standards are already set. It's not just a feedback from the supervisor, and hence provides a well-rounded feedback. Like I said, look at a circle and you're getting feedback from everybody who surrounds that specific employee. And of course, because of that, you're able to prevent the halo or the horn effect. This is whereby, wow, I know Irene, she talks too much. I know Daniel, they do that, because it's very objective. I, as Irene, will be very objective as I'm undertaking this feedback, because I don't know what the other person is going to say. So I may not have these effects of thinking as Irene as a person. I'll think Irene as per the person who is working towards the objectives that have been set. So I separate the two. I'm not looking at Irene as, Then the 360-degree system feedback help team members to work more effectively together. Because since we are all rating each other, like I said, the circle, all the elements, all the points, we're looking at the peers, we're looking at the clients, we're looking at everybody. So me as Irene, since I know I'll undergo through a 360 feedback, it brings in a strong teamwork. Because one, we're all human beings. I don't want to be rated. I would give it my best because I don't want to fail my team. And I don't want to say, Irene has rated me lowly because I didn't perform well. No, the standards are there. So for me as a team member, I don't want to let my team down. So it has been, and like I said, this is a system that the scholars have critiqued. It has been seen to show that people who embrace this 360 degrees have better teams. Further, it helps in understanding the organization needs and helps in identifying the developmental needs. Whereas one person may be able to identify, but I may be biased. Maybe for me, my focus is on training. So if I'm evaluating one person, I'll be looking at their training potential. But when it's a 360, everybody is looking at it from their own perspective. So that tells you you have a bigger pool in terms of identifying the needs of this person. Therefore, as a supervisor, as an organization, as a management, you're able to answer 3 key questions that everybody would want to have answered in terms of their performance. One is where should I improve my performance? Yeah, because of 1, 2, and 3. Because once you've rated my standard and you're like, wow, I was supposed to have done that recruitment within 3 days. Why did I do it within 3 months or 3 weeks or 1 week? I'll ask myself a question and I'll be like, wow, what should I do? And we'll have this discussion with like 2 or 3 people. So you can imagine how effective it's going to be, because how this person thinks about it is different. So you're able to pick the best out of the many opinions. Then I'll ask, what do I need to improve and how can I improve? And when I ask myself as a person, that is the first thing of owning the process. It's not you telling me, Irene, you need to do this. I'm asking myself these questions. And that's why I said this performance appraisal system is about conversations. It's about communication. You communicate to somebody to a point that they ask themselves, they sit back and ask, what can I do? But don't be, you should do this, you should do this. Because the moment you do that, the human nature has the element of being rebellious. So in summary, we can say that the 360 feedback system is defined as a collection of feedback of performance data on individual or group derived from a number of stakeholders in their performance. This, like I said, is more of a summary of what I've said. And like you can see, it's a circle. You can see this circle. So this is the employee here. So all these people are stakeholders. And you can see, like we said, there'll be the manager. This is the employee. We have the managers. We have the clients. And like I said earlier, for us as HR, at times we don't look ourselves as a customer service center, but we are a customer service center for the organization because people come to us for services. When a specific department wants to hire, we are offering that service. So they are our clients. We are their clients. So always look at it as, and in most cases, we look at clients or customers as external, but we also service internal clients. Then we also have the external clients. Maybe most of us HR people will be dealing maybe with like organizations like HRM. We'll be having like the banks, they are calling all the time. Maybe there's some of our employees have some facilities. Maybe we have the hospitals. Those are our external clients. But also let's also think about the internal clients, because I've realized some of us as HR people, we concentrate so much on the external client and forget that the same way we treat the external clients is the same way we're supposed to treat our internal clients. So these clients that we're dealing with will also help us in the feedback process. We have our peers, people who you work with. We have the reports, people who report to us, especially at senior level, the people who are reporting to you. So you also need to get the feedback from them. And as I'm saying, like such a system, because it may be a little bit sensitive, because especially if the culture, because all organizations have different cultures. If your culture is a very, we have some cultures where it's an open plan, open door policy. So I can get into the MD's office when I have something. But there's some cultures that for you to go to the MD, you have to go through like 5 processes. So you can imagine trying to implement the 360 degree. So if you don't have the ownership, you don't have the buy-in of the employees, you as a HR person will be very frustrated, because you'll be having a good system that its benefits, it's going to help this organization, but nobody buys it in. So you have to ensure that whatever system you put in place, let it have the buy-in. And like we always told, first get the buy-in of the senior management before you sell it to the other employees. Because if you don't get the buy-in of the senior management, they're the drivers. They're going to help you drive it. So once you get their buy-in, then the rest becomes very, very, very easy, because these are people who are reporting to them. So if they don't have the buy-in, there's some people who can't believe that my junior can come and evaluate me. What for? What do they want to know? I'm the boss, So also the cultural element comes in here. So the 360 degrees is whereby all these people will be evaluating you. And like I said earlier, ensure that the managers or the senior managers are the heart of this performance management. Because trust me, my dear colleagues, if the management does not buy in, whatever, not even performance management, whatever thing that you want to implement, whatever program, can be on wellness, anything that it is, if you don't get the buy-in of the managers, then you get some level of frustrations. And that's why we're saying that the managers, peers, customer suppliers, or colleagues are asked to complete questionnaires on the employee being assessed. So you can imagine if me as the head of department, my colleagues are being asked to talk about me, if I don't buy in the system, trust me, I'm going to frustrate it. Because I'm also part of the 360 degrees. Because I'm like, what will they say about me? You know, everybody will want to know what they are saying about me. But they need to understand that it's not about Irene, it's about the set standards. And we need to be very clear about that. Let's not deviate from the objective of the whole system. The person who's been appraised also need to fill in the questionnaire. Because me as Irene, as I've been assessed, I also need to assess myself. And in most cases, you find if the objectives or the standards that you've set are very objective and you're smart, and you have very clear ways of evaluating that performance, the variance will be very minimal. Because if like now, allow me to use the recruitment. If it's very clear the standard that I'm supposed to achieve in terms of senior recruitment, because you all agree senior recruitment, middle level recruitment, and other recruitments, the timelines may be different. So if the timelines for my senior recruitment is 1 week, just for illustration's sake, though that's very ambitious, unless I'm headhunting, and all my senior recruitments I've done for five weeks, I cannot rate myself otherwise. I will just say, I've performed poorly. And everybody who appraises me will be like, for real, I've performed poorly. However, I will put the reasons, maybe the comments. Maybe you gave me 1 week to hire for a senior recruitment, and we all know senior recruitments, what is required. So maybe I'll be like, the time frame given was not very objective. And as you're coming to review that, you're able to review it in the next period. Then the HR department should provide results to the employee. Some of us as HR, we get the reports, but we never give feedback. And the moment you don't give feedback, then it's left to the employees to imagine, how did it go? How did I perform? And now you bring up the lack of ownership because they're like, I don't know what so-and-so said. Have a summary. As much as you may not say what Irene said, just have a summary for somebody to know, this is how I've been performing over this period. This is what people think about me in terms of my personality. This is what they think in terms of how I relate with people, so that I'm able to develop myself. And this helps the employee to understand how his opinion differ from those of the group. Because at times you may be thinking you're the best in terms of communication. You're the best in terms of report writing. However, on the ground, they say, mambo kwa ground ni different. So maybe realistically, your reports, based on how the report standards are supposed to be, they're not up to standards. So it helps you understand. It helps you get to know, what do people expect out of me? Okay. Then what is the advantage of the multi-rate assessment of this 360-degree feedback system? One is that it is effective for career coaching. As HR, we're supposed to be leads in terms of coaching. So it helps you in managing a career coach. It helps to identify the employee's strengths and weaknesses, because all of us have our strengths and our weaknesses. And I tell people, your strengths make you better, your weaknesses help you, the opportunities for growth. Because if you're weak in one area, it means that's an opportunity. And also your strengths, if you're not very clear about your strengths or you're very excited, you have to ensure consistency in terms of your strengths. Because your strengths, they say if you're not very clear, will be your threats. So you really have to have that balancing effect in both of them. In terms of the disadvantages, is one, in most cases, the questionnaire may be lengthy. And like I said earlier, as you introduce this performance management, try and make it simple. Don't complicate things. Because the moment you complicate things, most people will get, because one, you're talking about, from a HR perspective, you're okay, you have no problem with it. But from the business, they'll be like, if I have to fill 18 kind of documentation, a questionnaire, I'll get bored. I'll not support it. So let's ensure that the questionnaires, as much as it's lengthy, let's try and shorten them. The amount of paperwork involved is extremely large due to the involvement of multiple people in the appraisal process of a single individual. Because like we said, when you look at the circle of this person, there are like 7 people who are evaluating this person. So you can imagine the kind of paperwork that it's going to have. However, as you all know, we are getting paperless. So we encourage that in case we embrace this, then have an online system, you know. But like you said, Rome was never built in a day. You start from somewhere. Then when this works, then you go to the next level. Because once it works very well in terms of paperwork, then if you get to a system, then it becomes very easy to implement that. However, it is our role to educate people that as much as this is paperwork, let them see the benefit of the system, because people want to see the end result. If you show them the benefit is good, trust me, they're not going to get tired of the paperwork. So who should do the appraising? Generally, the supervisor or the reporting manager is the best person to observe and evaluate subordinates' performance, and is also responsible for the person's performance, because one, this person supervises this person every day. So ideally, they know what this person performs. They know their weaknesses, they know their strengths. However, they say, like we said in the earlier, that when you rely on a supervisor rating, then it becomes biased and it's just one person. And like they said, in case the supervisor doesn't like you, in case for me as Irene, I feel that my supervisor has a problem with me, then what will happen? In that case, then as much as it may be objective, I'll feel like my supervisor is being biased on me. And especially if I feel and I believe that I'm a star performer. Therefore, it's an essential that performance or appraisal is done by some other people or persons. Okay. So this just shows, like let's say you can see like this is a circle. So in terms of the 360-degree feedback, the people who can be able to appraise. Yeah. So one, and you can start it from any, okay, you can see it's a circle. So everybody can be appraising at any given time. We have the immediate supervisor, because at the end of the day, as much as other people will appraise, the immediate supervisor is very key, because they are the people who are going to have the summary. We have the peers, we have the rating committees. In some organizations, they have committees to rate people, whereby after the whole appraisal, and in most cases, it helps when you need to rationalize. And especially whereby maybe the feedback from the employees, whereby they feel maybe they are being discriminated, there's a lot of biasness, there's a lot of halo effect, there's a lot of, so you have a committee in place that sits down and rationalize the ratings. And these are people who well understand these people. And you can find like in each department, you'll have a representation. And the objectivity is that nobody will say that our department was not well represented. So you can have rating committees. Of course, the self-rating is very, very important. And I always encourage people, before you undertake a performance appraisal, let this person have their rating first. Because even as a supervisor, it helps you in the conversations that you're going to have. It's good to know that this is what this person thinks about them. So that in case it's otherwise, you as a supervisor, you're able to know how you're going to drive that conversation. Because nothing is frustrating to both the employee and the supervisor, whereby an employee believes they're a star performer, but you as a supervisor, you know that this person has a lot to go before they get to that starship. So you can imagine if they've not rated themselves and you have not gone through their self-ratings, and you're there seated and you're looking at appraisal form and they're saying they scored everything, and in your mind, you know, for real, that's not the case. So that's why it's very important to allow the staff to self-evaluate themselves, take time. And this is another thing I always tell people in performance management, take time and understand the documents. Don't just do performance appraisal for the sake of doing it. Plan for it. Don't have a performance appraisal. You're very busy on your laptop. You're very busy on your phone. Give time. Give it the due time that it requires, and the time and the seriousness. Because the moment you don't do that, then the biasness effect comes in. Because an employee will be like, my boss was not even serious. They were just looking at it. They were just busy on their laptops. You know, Give them the time, plan for it, schedule it like any other meeting that you schedule. And that way you'll have gone through the appraisal, the self-rating appraisal, you know the weaknesses, you know what this person thinks about them. In case it's something that you feel otherwise, it gives you time to even prepare your thought process. How am I going to approach this employee? You know, of course, the subordinates will also be there to appraise. We go to the third objective in terms of the uses of the feedback. And there are various ways in terms of the feedback. And like you realize, my dear colleagues, is like most of these things, you realize this is just a formalized part of it, but most of them, I'm picking them as I'm going through the process. So you can see there is the individual counseling, there's organized training and development. We have the team building. Like I said, this is very effective in terms of building the teams, the performance management system, the strategic and organization development. I talked about the organization objectives. We have something we call validation of training and other initiatives. And when you have a good system, this will be, and for Benjamin, these are the things that you need to sell to people in terms of what are the benefits of the performance management system that you have, because they help in getting all this. Then finally, we have the remuneration. Everybody wants to hear something. In case your performance management system is related to your performance bonuses, to your annual increment, then this helps in being able to determine whether you're saying anybody who performed around this gets 2%, anybody who performs around this gets 5%, and it's well defined and everybody appreciates it. And like I said, this is more of a summary of what that we had already talked about, the 360 degrees and having people evaluating you like a circle and addressing all the issues that evolve around the performance of an employee. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of this feedback program? One, it serves as a method of collecting information from many sources in an employee's environment. And I can't emphasize this. I think I've really talked about this because it helps. You're able to know about Irene, you're able to know about this employee. And we as supervisors, it helps in terms of getting the honest assessment, because there are different people who are giving this information. Of course, it provides some level of confidentiality in the input from many people over employee affairs in their job, because all this is done in confidence. It helps somebody to see themselves based on how others sees you. There's something to talk about the Johari window. I'm sure all of you maybe have heard about it. Those who not have heard about it, you know about it, whereby this is what you think about yourself. This is what other people think about yourself. And even there's that part of you that you don't even know, where people will tell you, hey, by the way, you're like this, like, oh, me, I didn't know. So it really, the 360 really helps and empowers somebody to clearly understand themselves. Most employees find it fair because it's not just one person, it's many people. It's an indication of performance, enhancing or distraction from work situation, because it feels nice when you know my pay is, I mean, because I'm being evaluated, then I'm also part of the system. You can imagine if me as a peer, I'm used to evaluate the other peer, I also feel, wow, the organization appreciates my input. It allows to improve the system, thereby creating greater harmony and overall improvement. The employees are able to identify their strengths and address the skill gaps. And of course, it leads to continuous learning, growing of self-confidence, and improved productivity. And how it helps in terms of confidence and empowerment of employees is that even though I'm being used to evaluate my peers, I feel, wow, you know, it gives me a sense of empowerment. It gives me a sense of confidentiality that, wow, confidence, sorry, that I'm also part of the whole system, you know? So those are some of the advantages. And in summary, for a supervisor, you as a person supervising, how does it help you? It will give you an accurate assessment. Maybe you're not very clear about one or two elements. It becomes very clear. It eliminates accusations of favorism. 5 people cannot talk about the same thing. Nobody will talk about favorism. There's greater objectivity, rich understanding of the performance. It promotes a lot of open communication around performance. People are able to communicate in a way that I feel I can go to my peer and tell them, what do you think? What do you think I need to do? You know, we're able to help each other. In case there's an area that I feel they're performing better and they can help me, a lot of open communication, because all of us are part of the system. It enforces the organization values. Like I said, what is a culture? What is a culture? Actually, one of the things, and they've said that succeeds, if you want to build your culture and you have a 360-degree system, trust me, whatever culture that you want to have in place will easily flow because everybody kind of feels they're part of it. It does not matter who you are, you're part of this system. And it's very, very easy to implement. But like we said, how you implement is also very important. Let's get the buy-in, have a process, let people have the awareness, get the buy-in of the senior management, get the buy-in of the staff, get the buy-in of all the stakeholders, and trust me, it becomes very easy to implement. To the organization, constructive feedback and open communication, culture, build leadership managerial capability. You're able to know how you're able to grow your people. You have managers for tomorrow. You're able to map your talent in case you have a talent management system. It helps in terms of, because you're like, maybe there's somebody who is just as one of the peers, maybe it's when, let's say if it's the HR, maybe just a HR, they are a HR assistant. But based on how they undertake the whole process, you're like, wow, this person can be developed into something else, they can grow to a manager. You're able to map them. You're able to see whatever skills that they have that maybe you didn't know. So it really helps in terms of building your leadership pool. It embeds values and expected working competencies, and it provides feedback about leadership and management strength. As management, it's good for us to also know what people think about us, because at times the management, in some organizations, you find the management is up there, the other people are nowhere close to management. So it's good for you to know what the people think about it. So through the 360 feedback system, you're able to know what people think about it. So you can imagine how it is whereby you as a manager, wow, this is what people think about me, it helps in terms of building yourself. It helps in terms of embracing the good practices that you're undertaking. And it helps you in terms of improving on the areas that the people feel maybe, some people will say maybe you're not approachable. Some people will say maybe you don't tell us things in good time. Some people will say you come at, they'll give you all that feedback and it helps you. And I always tell people, always take feedback positively, because feedback is what grows you. And especially the feedback that is not positive. Okay, most of us want the positive feedback. It is good, it's excellent. However, the good feedback only is just, you just enhance consistency of what you've been doing. But this other feedback helps you in developing yourselves and can be a powerful trigger for change. Like I said, you embrace it well. Whatever you want to implement, should be a culture element, should be a change element, it becomes very easy because all of us or all the teams will be working together. The disadvantages, everything has its own good ways, and the other side of the coin, one, ineffective assessment items. If you don't have a proper tool, then they can have a lot of ambiguousness whereby people are not very clear. If you've not aligned it with the organization vision, mission, and strategy, then now it becomes like your own document versus wherever the organization is going and wherever you're driving. So you need to ensure that it's well aligned. Lack of senior level support. Like I said, if you don't have the senior level support, whatever you're trying to implement, then it becomes very difficult. Lack of communication, people don't know what it is all about. And that's why we need to create a lot of awareness, let people know. Then of course, is there that fear and lack of trust? They're like, wow, why is management doing this? Why are they involving everybody? You're like, what will my peers think about me? Maybe they want me out. There's that fear. So, and those are the disadvantages are what we need to, disadvantages. We need to look at them when we're implementing to ensure that these disadvantages don't frustrate our process. Because the moment, there may be that element of people lacking the trust. So what do you do as a HR person to ensure that the employees have trust in this system? Okay. Poor planning. If you don't plan well, you can imagine if you're having a 360 degrees feedback and everybody has to be involved and your timelines are 2 weeks and you have like a staff count of like let's say 300, if you don't plan well, trust me, and they say lack of planning is a shortcut of planning to fail. Inappropriate delivery of feedback, and in most cases is in case people don't understand the tools that they're using, then definitely they give feedback that is not appropriate. No development plan. It's just a system and there's no output. So you really need to develop the output and let people see that after all this, have we been able to have a development plan on the way forward? No accountability. Who is accountable? Is it the line manager? Who is like you have a system and there's no accountability, then what happens? No follow-up. People want to know, how did we perform? How did my department, as a peer, did I evaluate well? When you go through the forms as a HR, since we are the drivers of this process, do we give feedback to people? Do we tell them that next time when you do this, you can improve on this area? Because what you do, and I think you all bear me witness, is we have these very wonderful systems in place. We'll give people deadlines and they'll give us whatever we are looking for. But once we never give follow-up. We never tell them this is what happens. So we stay for another 6 months until the next appraisal system. So let's always embrace the follow-up. And like I said, if you want a system to work, look at the disadvantages, work with the disadvantages as you're implementing it, because that is the only way it's going to be successful, okay? So guys, so my colleagues, this is more of a summary in terms of how the traditional feedback was and what we've been discussing. And like you can see, the traditional was whereby it was a supervisor and me. So now this one you can see. So this is more of a summary. This is me as a person, as an employee, and all these people. And that's why, like I once said, that's why we call it the 360 degrees. Like you can see, like a circle that is 360. All these people are going to evaluate you. And like I talked about the internal customers, we also have the external customers. You can take it further, but now here it is you as a HR person to discuss, to agree, what element do you have, what tool are you going to put in place? And like I said, start it simple. Because if you start it very complicated, then you complicate yourself. You complicate the whole system. So start it simple, let it work at a simpler level. Then as you're doing the follow-up, as you're giving them feedback, let us have that gradual growth. And these are the considerations that we need to make before we implement. And I think I've discussed those ones as I'm going through my slides. Sorry for that. Yes, so one of the considerations we're asking ourselves, is the organization committed to continuous learning? Because if one of your values or one of your objectives for that year is not on learning and development, trust me, if you implement it, timing is very key. We are told timing in everything that you do is very key. If at that point, it's not one of the major objectives, first sell it, let them buy it. The moment it's bought in by the senior management, then you can be able not to start implementing it. Does the organization see the value of developing leaders in the house? Maybe they don't. But you as a HR person, you know, if you don't develop leaders, then you're going to have a gap. That continuity will miss. So you have to look for mechanisms. You have to look for the right time to be able to sell it. Is the organization willing to make the changes necessary to do this? These are the questions that you as a HR person will be asking yourself before you implement this process. Because if you don't ask yourself these questions, you're going to implement them, you're going to bring this process in place. And when it doesn't work, you get frustrated. Is the upper level management willing to lead the way and volunteer for 360-degree evaluation? I, as a CEO, will I be willing to be evaluated by a subordinate? Or I believe I am the boss and I'm everything. I know everything. I'm a dictator. And as I said, culture is very important. So if you have a dictatorship kind of culture and you're there telling me that I have to be evaluated, I mean, what are you telling me about? So if the honors is you as a HR person to ensure that you first have a buy-in. What is the level of trust in the organization? Will the organizational culture support honest feedback? Culture. Is honesty one of your key values? Because if it's not, and you're trying to sell a system, then you first have to sell that honesty. Let people have honest within themselves. Because if you don't have, they say, like now, allow me to use this, like now we know whatever period we are in right now, everybody's on the ground. So first ensure your ground is well, your ground is leveled. Mambo kwa ground iko sawa. That's what most people will say. Once the ground is well leveled, you know you have the support, the culture supports it, the senior management support it, the organization is willing to make that change. They have seen the essence of developing leaders and they're committed to continuous learning, then that is the right time to implement it. In case there's one or two things, look for ways of having the buy-in. They're very, and like I said, use data, use whatever you have. There'll be something that you can use to sell this wonderful tool to the management. And once you've done it, then you implement it. And I always tell people, I always encourage, when you're going to make a presentation to your senior management or to your supervisor, and the senior management, I believe maybe you have like the ESCO meetings, you have the meetings that you have, and you're like, today I want to make a presentation and I feel I want to introduce this. Let them understand. And what people want to understand is how you're going to implement it. How will it, is it that you want it overnight? Have a dashboard that clearly shows. And in this case, for the 360 feedback, you start with the planning. You tell them, I want to have like 1 or 2 months to plan. Let them see a dashboard. Let them see that you know what you want to implement. Yeah? Tell them, we want to pilot it and see if it works. And at times, they say, if you want to implement something gradually, at the pilot point, ensure that the pilot is so successful that they don't want to let go of that system. But if your pilot, you've not worked so well on the pilot and you don't even know what you want to achieve during the pilot, and the pilot backfires, it becomes very difficult for you to go back and start saying, oh, let me do this, let me do this. So plan, and planning is a key thing. And you'll all agree with me, in this whole process, the most important process is the planning. Because if you plan it right, trust me, then you're going to achieve it. Plan, have the piloting. Once you pilot it, you can pilot it with your small HR team. Then, based on what you learn from the pilot, then now they have the other, even pilot can come in stages. Pilot with the HR team, pilot with maybe 1 or 2 departments, then we see how it goes before you roll it out to the main organization. But what happens is at times you're so excited about our system, you're so excited about something that you want to implement, and you just hit the ground without having a proper pilot and without picking the lessons that you've learned from the pilot. And what happens? The moment it goes out to the whole organization and things don't go right, you get frustrated. So ensure that you get your piloting right and you learn from the pilot. Whatever feedback you get from the pilot, take it positively and ensure that whatever gap was there on the second pilot, confirm that you have been able to close that gap. Then by the time you now roll it out to the main organization, that is for full implementation. And in most cases, you'll find some of these processes, you'll have staggered implementation. You can start at 360 from the senior management, let them start at that level, or then it goes down like that. Because the moment you start it there, then it works at that level. Then you go to the middle level based on the structure and also based on the numbers of employees that you have. Because if your staff number is, let's say like you're talking about 30 people, you can implement on the whole organization at a go. But assume you're talking about staff numbers of like 2,000, 1,000, you have to ensure that you do it right. Because you can imagine when you implement it to 2,000 and backfires, you can just, it will be very frustrating. And you can imagine 1,000 employees calling HR, asking, not understanding the tool that you have in place, it can really be overwhelming. Of course, give the feedback. How did it go? Let people know. Did we do well? Do we need to improve? And how was it? And based on the feedback that you get, then you review. And as you're planning, part of the planning will be based on the reviews, on the feedback that you've gotten. And now you plan and the cycle continues. And like we said earlier, performance appraisal, performance management is a continuous process. So you're always planning, you're always implementing, you're always giving feedback, you're always reviewing. So it is a continuous process. So like I said, these are the things that are in the process that you need to ensure that have taken place. And this is just a summary of what I've said. But the critical factors that if you don't take care of them, then it becomes very, very complicated. Involving the employees early enough, let them know what is coming. Let it not be a surprise. That I come on Monday, I find an email that effective tomorrow, we are doing this, and I need feedback within 2 days. Trust me, they're going to, the first thing that becomes like, hey, you're going to be fine. You know, the employees have this tendency that when they see anything from HC or HR, it's like, what is in the pipeline? Something must be cooking. So let them know what is happening and let them know that it's for the betterment of not just the employees, but for the whole organization at large. Okay. Why they fail. And this is more of a summary again of what I said earlier, because one, it's often time consuming and difficult to analyze information. The 360-degree appraisal mechanism can have an adverse effect on the motivation and the performance of employees. Motivation, very key. One of our roles as HC of human resource is to ensure that we have a motivated workforce. So I don't think you'd want to implement a system that is coming to work otherwise. So you have to ensure that whatever system you have in place is a system that is going to ensure that the employees remain motivated. Commitment of the top management, I can't reemphasize. Top management is everything. If you don't get the buy-in of the top management in terms of their time and financial resources, trust me, it can be a tall order to implement it. So ensure that you have the buy-in of the top management. Customer perception of the organization and their incomplete knowledge about the process and their clarity of the process. This is our role. We have to create the awareness. Let them understand what is this thing that is coming. You know, they always say, I don't know, like most organizations, like, there's this thing that HR brought. You know, they always say there's this thing. Ensure that they know what this thing is. Do they understand it? Because if they don't understand it, even the customers will start saying this strange thing. And the moment already that is in their minds, God, they say whatever comes in the input will determine the output. So if for them they look it as a thing, then that tells you clearly the output of what they'll give you will be just something that you can also understand. Yeah. Often the process suffers because of lack of knowledge on the part of the participants or the raters. Like I said, creating awareness is very, very important. So I want to pause there and ask if there's someone who has a question or any input that maybe would want to discuss. So open it up to you guys before we continue on what we've covered so far. So anyone is free to make a comment. And as usual, if nobody is free, then I just pick at random. Anyone who'd want to say something? Nyambura Mbogwa, tell us something. Nyambura Mbogwa, are we together?
Yes, we are.
Tell us something. What do you think so far?
Can you give me a few minutes? I'm in the midst of something, and then I'll respond.
Thank you so much, Nyambura. Maybe Rose Mtesh. Hope I pronounced that right. Or anyone who wants to volunteer?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
I find this type of feedback, the 360-degree feedback, it is one of the best. But again, when I try to follow it, you see in most organizations, the HR person, regardless of the good you always do for the employees, they will always see you as an enemy. I don't know whether it only happens in my organization. When this particular approach, the 360 degrees, is put to be operational, because I can see here the subordinates, as I say here, we have the immediate supervisor, the rating committee. Some people might have personal problems with the HR. Let's say that the HR is now in the circle of the 360 degrees feedback. So I still find it to be having a certain percentage of bias, because maybe you instituted a disciplinary committee against a subordinate, and now the same subordinate is required to give feedback on how you are performing in this particular organization. So actually, on my part, I still find it to be a bit difficult, because not 100% actually feedback will be got from this particular approach. I don't know what my other colleagues can say about it, but that's my personal feeling as an HR practitioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Alphonse, for that input. What do the other people think? Let's have a discussion towards that. People think and look at us as enemies. People look at HR people as enemies, and I think you're right, Alphonse. Most people look at us like the police or the police of the organization. So every time even they see you walk around, they see you, they want to hide. So what happens now when we want to introduce the 360-degree? What will be their input? Will they be objective? So I open that up for discussion.
My take.
Yes, please.
I think we have a job to do. And regardless of how people look at us, the job is cut out for us. Definitely, because we are responsible for the worst thing, writing those letters for dismissal and discipline. You can never be a good person. You can never be seen to be good. But for as long as what we have done, we do it objectively, and everyone can see, because at the end of the day, we have to be objective in what we do, that there's no bias, even as we do what we are supposed to do. Whenever you come up with a good initiative, I believe it will be taken because it will be seen in good faith. Because every other time, if we are doing those disciplinary letters or those disciplinary action, we have always done them in good faith. My view is that even another initiative that comes in, we bring on board, will be taken and people will see that it's in good faith, not biased, or maybe not against anyone at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What's your name, please? I think on your login.
My name is Amkaya.
Thank you, Amkaya, because on your login it's a different name. So yeah, I agree with you. Let's be objective on what we do and how we implement. Because at the end of the day, as HR, we have a role to the business. We are accountable of what we do. And for me, I believe and I encourage my peers and my colleagues that when you implement anything, whatever it is, whether disciplinary, whether promotions, whatever process that you have to undertake, recruitment, let it be objective, and anybody who challenges the decisions that you've made. And I know especially when it comes to disciplinary, at times there's a lot of conflict, whereby for you as HR, you're being driven by the process. But there'll be somebody else will come and like, no, why did you have to fire so-and-so? Maybe it's why don't you yet? So-and-so was not fired. So if you divert from the process and you have maybe some lack of consistency in what you do, then it becomes very difficult. So I believe that if you're very objective in what you're doing and you have sold the idea, it has been tested and tried, then I think the onus is actually on you as a HR person to ensure that you drive it. I mean, for me, it's more of your KPI. I want to drive this and I want to succeed, because it's very unfortunate that as HR being a cost center, when you sit on the table, anything that comes out from your report, it's a cost element. However, I know there's some HR people who now are trying to generate revenue for the organizations. I have people I know who are working in HR, and they're able to bring up programs, which is a HR-driven program. And as you sit on the table, you're like, oh, I've also been able to generate this revenue. So I think it is a big challenge for us, whereby in most cases, people look at us as just the minuses. For us, it's just, we're just removing, it's a cost, you're bringing things that will come. You bring the 360 degrees, it's because you want to know what I've been doing. They don't look at it positively. However, like I said earlier, the buy-in, what process do you use? You know your team. You know how to make them support. It's interesting, but allow me to use this. It's like when you're quoting, you know what makes the other person happy? Or if it's your friend, your best friend, you know what makes my friend happy? Once in a while, I'll have a conflict with my friend. And when I have that conflict with my friend, I look for a way that I will show, sikuwa na ubaya. I was just trying to. So it's actually up to you as a HR person to really sit back with your team and reflect and ask yourself, what can we do? Because at the end of the day, you'll have to, unfortunately, you'll have to separate with people once in a while. Unfortunately, you'll have to promote people who are not very popular with the other staff because one, they have what it takes. You have used a process and you believe they have the potential. Because people would want, we know we have these vocal people, and unto you, if you have a union, it even becomes more complicated. They believe that maybe the union should have, so how do you balance? And the honors actually is on us. And that's why we need to really ensure that we have a lot of these forums. Let's engage and participate in these HR forums, because this is the only way we're able to share our challenges and be able to learn from the other people. I had this challenge and I was able to implement. And I'm hoping that maybe as we close this session, we'll have a point where we can have someone who can tell us the challenges that they had when they're trying to implement, maybe like a performance management. What did they do for it to work? Because this networking with your peers is the only way, trust me, is the only route to your success as a HR professional. Because this is the only place that people will understand what you're feeling. People will understand what you're going through. When you see people look at you and they're like, we amekuja kunifuta, how it feels. I mean, as a person, you walk in and everybody, they were laughing, they stopped talking. It's only in such a forum that you're able to, people understand what you're saying. So I agree with us. Let's continue being objective in what we do. Let's not give up on the good ideas that we have. Because at the end of the day, we'll be judged by what we did. When you have your own self-evaluation, you'll judge yourself as a HR professional by what you did. If you leave an organization and you cannot show anything that you did as a HR person, then trust me, you'll have yourself to judge. And I always tell people as a leader, if you've tried everything and everything has stopped, nothing seems to work, you can even change the format of how you do your emails. If you say, dear this, you say, hello this, and they say, oh, when Irene came, we changed the way we were doing our emails, we changed the way we are doing our letters, something that is very basic. So at least there's something that you can actually show as a person that I did something. So let's not give up. When we have these wonderful ideas, let's seek our networks, things that have worked, and trust me, I believe that nothing is impossible. And because nothing is impossible, let's just discuss, in case you want to implement this process, what can you do to ensure that you have an effective 360 feedback appraisal system in place. So for you to have an effective one, there are things that you need to do. One, you need to have clarity in terms of the role. Do people understand? Even the organization, do they understand what is their role? Because what happens is we have a system, but nobody understands what is their role. I'm a line manager, I don't know my role. Have we aligned the goals? Are the goals aligned? You're in HR, but all the goals, every person has an objective that is not aligned to you. And like we all know, setting of objectives is very important. Because if you set the right objectives and they're smart, and like we all know, all objectives, it's like a pyramid. You start with the organization, you go with the section. I mean, they all have to be somewhat interrelated. If they're not interrelated and you come to the 360 degrees, then somehow there'll be a disconnect. So ensure that you have aligned the goals and you align them to the strategic goals. What is your strategic goal for 2022? And all of us, and most organizations, let me not say all of us, but most of organizations have strategic plans. And on the strategic plan, there'll always be the implementation matrix. You as a HR person, you need to look, even in 2022, what is the expectations in terms of the strategic direction? Where do they want us to be in 2022? Then from there, you pick your objectives for your team. Because if you don't, you'll be going a different way. And when you go, like, let's say, like for the annual review, maybe the CEO is asking you, where were we? Maybe you wanted to assume maybe the employee satisfaction survey index. Maybe for 2021, let's say the baseline you had was 18%, and they wanted to move it to maybe like 22% or whatever percentage it is. Okay, that is very low. Let's say it was above average. It was at 70%. They wanted to achieve the ideal of 80%. For you have no even idea that you're supposed to have achieved that in 2022. You've not even undertaken an employee satisfaction survey. So whom do you blame? You blame yourself. So it's up to us to ensure we are strategically placed. Our goals are placed in terms of the strategic direction. For example, if one of the achievements that you're supposed to have achieved in 2022 is an employee satisfaction survey of 80%, what do you do as a head of HR to achieve that? You have to have a tool in place. You have to plan for the process. You have to plan for how it is going to be undertaken. Will it be online? Will it be physical? What will work for you? You know, you plan. So that's how you align your goals. However, it's unfortunate, but some of us don't look at those documents. And when you go to the table, you come out of that meeting, say, I don't know what is wrong with the CEO. It's like, yet you didn't align your goals to the strategic directions or the mission and values of the organization, okay? Then we have the ongoing feedback. Always give feedback. And I said in my intro, performance management is about every day is a performance management. Something performance is happening, give feedback every day. If you go there and you see somebody talking to a customer and they're not doing it right, call them and tell them. Don't wait for 6 months to tell them. They don't even remember which customer you're talking about. So let it be real time. Monitoring, are you monitoring your performance? Because the moment you monitor, you're able to pick. I don't like some people will have a dashboard, but you have the red, blue, amber. So if you can see for a long time, the monitoring on my dashboard there's so much red. I need to ask myself as a supervisor, what is happening? Maybe I'm not coaching this person right. Let me not wait for the end of the year or for the end of the appraisal period in 6 months. And I'm asking this person, why is it that you're having so many things that you're not achieving? But if I pick it within the first week, if I pick it within the first month, I can assure you that that employee by month 6, they'll be on green. So let's have that ongoing performance monitoring. And we can only have that, like I said earlier, by having the right tools in terms of monitoring and having objectives that are measurable. Then based on the monitoring, we have the development, goal setting. Further, we have things like coaching and support, the rewards and recognition and compensation. Like I said, employees should be appropriately rewarded, recognized, and compensated for the efforts put in by them. And like we all agree.
Irene?
Yes, please.
Is there a reason why your screen is not changing?
It's not changing.
No, we're still on the implementation, the review, the planning, piloting, implementation, feedback, that circle.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, all this time we've been on that.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Sorry for that. Because I thought, oh my goodness. Okay, let me try. Thanks for that. Let me stop sharing, then I start Irish. Okay. And now?
Perfect. Something is different now.
Something is different.
Yeah, you have to pick a slide though.
Okay.
Yeah, now there's some movement on your screen.
You can see the objectives?
Yes, now we can.
Wow, thank you so much for that. I'm sorry. I assumed you were moving because on my screen is actually moving. Well, thank you for that.
It's not been moving. Thank you.
Okay. So you can now see the role clarification, the goal alignment, the screen.
Perfect, yes.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much, my dear, for that. Kindly, in case it disappears again, just give me a shout.
Okay, Doc.
Okay. So like I was talking about the role, I was defining them. Sorry, I was assuming that we are all on the same screen. And like I said, we have to be clear in terms of the role, the goal alignment, the ongoing feedback, the performance monitoring, the development goal setting. And I was going to the next, which is coaching and support. We need to coach our people. We need to support them. and this is based on the gaps that we've identified. The rewards recognition, people want to be rewarded. Trained appraisers, very, very important. Part of the implementation plan that you have in place, you should train the people who will be appraising. Let me know what I'm looking for. Yeah, then also let's encourage continuous and open communication and have a standardized way of doing things. The way one person appraises, let be the other way, let it be all standard. Let's not have like one person is using a rating system, another one is using an observation system, another one is using, so how do you even define that? How do you summarize that? So let's ensure that it is all standardized. Of course, let's ensure there is mutual trust and confidence. It needs to be very reliable. The process needs to be real in such a case that in case I want to go back, I can be able to see, I can be able to be explained to. I talked about the objectives. Very important. Getting objectives right is getting the system right. Let them be clear, not vague. Very specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, with a time bound. I need to achieve this within 6 months, within 2 weeks, within a day, within a year. Because if you tell me I need to achieve something and you've not told me it's about a year, and for me I'm thinking, or maybe you've not told me it's about 2 weeks, for me I'm thinking it's about a year. So you can imagine the kind of discussion you're going to have with this employee when you're telling them, by the way, I thought this should have been achieved within 2 weeks. And they're like, I didn't know about it. I know there's something frustrating, like when somebody tells you, I didn't know about it. And whose fault is it? Me as a supervisor, because the objective I set was not smart enough. The review and appeals, let's always have room for appeal. If an employee feels for real, I was not appraised in the right manner, let's not put them off. Let's take time to understand. And the beauty of the 360 appraisal system is that if somebody has been appraised by 5 people, chances are the average will be real. And in case there's something that is coming up, in case they feel like one person did not appraise them well, you can be able to look at the other appraisers and you're like, wow, there's some consistency in this. And maybe Irene was biased based on this person. Maybe they don't get along well. Maybe they have, and of course that goes back to the training. Maybe I was not trained well. So for me, I'm looking at it as from my own understanding. Then you should always have the post appraisal interview, very, very important, whereby you give the feedback to the employee about the whole process and you discuss with them so that they understand the areas that they need to improve, and you ensure that it's well documented. You have the documentation, accuracy of the ratings, quality of the rating form, very important, because if the quality is not good, and always take feedback. And that's why we're talking about the planning and the pilot. When you pilot the system, at that point, get all the feedback, because people may say, hey, this form is too long. This form is too complicated. I can't understand what you're saying. I can't, take that feedback, because that is what will help you in ensuring that you have the quality of your form, the quality of the tool that you're going to use is not compromised. So in terms of effectiveness of the appraisal system, these are the things that if you're well implemented, then you're going to ensure that the system is not compromised. So that takes us to the next objective, whereby we are going to describe the components of the 360-degree feedback. And from the components, you realize as I go through the slide, is that these are things that have been picked up. And like Adalia said, that where we broke up this objective into small compartments is that so that you clearly understand, you don't lose on anything. So in case we said it in a broad way, in the principle of ensuring that the objectives are very specific, we're very specific. So what are these components that will ensure that your 360 system is effective? 1, the self-appraisal. Yeah. As Irene, I have the privilege of appraising myself. And I'm supposed to be trained in the creation of awareness. We need to train our employee on how they're going to appraise themselves. Then we have the supervisor's appraisal, we have the subordinate's appraisal, and we have the peer appraisal. So all these people need to be trained on what they're going to do. And when you're appraising, we go back to, we are appraising the set standards. We're not appraising Irene as how she is, you know. We are appraising based on the standards that we have, on the objectives that have well been clearly articulated, and objectives that have been defined and discussed with the employees and they understand them. So this is what we are appraising. And with this, we're able to see if it's a self-appraisal, since the objectives are there, what happens? In the self-appraisal, one, I, as Irene, I'm given a chance to look at my strengths, my weaknesses, and my achievements, and judge my own performance. Very, very important. Because this is the only way I'm able to have that self-reflection moment in terms of my performance. I'm looking at a certain objective and I'm telling myself, wow, I was supposed to achieve this. This is what I've achieved. Yeah. As a superior, as a supervisor, what are you appraising? Yes. It's whether you're appraising the responsibilities of the actual performance based on what you'd agree on. Okay. Then we have the subordinate appraisal. What is the subordinate appraising? This, it gives a chance to the judge the employee on the parameters like communication, motivating abilities, superior's ability to delegate the work, leadership qualities. And this is whereby some people will tell you, you tend to favor someone. You tend to, every time you need something, every time there's a training, only Irene goes. Every time there's a meeting, only Irene goes. Every time there's this, only, they give you that feedback. And maybe you as a supervisor, you've been doing it, not even knowing it. Because you know, there is this tendency, if one of your team members gives you what you're looking for, you find out that you'll find yourself when there's this complex assignment that you have to, you're like, they're going to do it. But now as a supervisor, you need to ask yourself, what can I do to ensure that they mentor these other people? So in terms of the subordinate appraisal, they come and tell you, I think you've been giving so much to Lucy. Every time that this presentation, she's on, you know, so it gives you a very good platform of trying to know what these people think about you. Then how about the peer appraisal? In the peer appraisal, and this is mainly when you look at the internal customers, it's very helpful because it gives feedback on what other people think about you. Then this process, I discussed the effectiveness, what we need to do to ensure that it's effective. So how about the process? It's very effective, but do you have the process? Do you understand the process? And there's that circle. You remember the circle that we had gone around about what needs to be done? You have the planning, you have the piloting, you have the implementation, you have the feedback and the review, and the circle contains. So how is this process? In Canada, you come to the actual implementation. One, implementation, planning, and design. What design do you have? And like I've said earlier, a performance management that works for organization A may not work for organization B. So you have to define what works best for you. How do you communicate? Do you have kickoff meetings? How do you distribute the questionnaires? The process report? Do you have a report? What is your reporting system? The feedback consultations? How are you going to undertake them? Are you going to do it online? Are you going to sit with a group? So it is up to you to define what works best for you, because what works best for one organization may not work for the other organization. Number 5, follow-up discussions with the respondents. There's something you can pick up, you're like, I think I need to get more information on what Lucy meant, you know, follow them up. Then from there, you're able to develop your plan and implement and follow up accordingly. And based on that, then you'll be able to come up with tools that will help you in this system. And the various tools that will help up one will have evaluations. How are you going to evaluate this system? Yep. What are the reports? What reports do you require? And this is defined. It is you who will define. It is your process. What coaching mechanisms are required? Maybe some people are they don't know how to give feedback. So you need to coach them. How do I give feedback? How do I communicate? How do I give negative feedback? We're very good at giving positive feedback. Wow, you performed so well. But how about when you have to give negative feedback? Do you need to coach them? Then of course you have the follow-up in it. And based on that, we'll have, in terms of the coaching, there's some parameters that maybe you can pick up as a HR person. So maybe just for us to just pick, maybe these are some of the parameters that in case you embrace this system, you may be able to pick up. So the examples will be like 1, the self-development, communication skills. How is your emotional intelligence? If you're given negative feedback, how do you react? Do you bang the tables and walk out of a room? What is your personal effectiveness? Are you creative? Do you have innovation? Do you have leadership qualities? How are you at managing teams? How are you at influencing others? They say a good leader is a person who is able to influence others, to do even things that they don't even believe in. When you ask them, you want us to jump, they ask you how high, and they do it volunteer. If they volunteer, you don't force them. You know, how good are you in terms of influencing the other people? How are you good at managing change, managing performance, building relations, business skills? How are your business skills? Yeah. And based on this, then you're able to you'll pick up what parameters are you looking for? Your personal brand. How is your brand as a person? Do people understand that you can also be a brand, or they just say of this branding, and when you ask somebody, what is your personal brand? They're like, who? What? How? What is that? You know? So what have you done? And these are the kind of discussions, the kind of measurement parameters that as you're developing your system, you pick up, you're like, since I know my strategic directions, which parameters will I put in my tool so that I'm able to achieve whatever objective I have? And key to enable you to achieve this or to know the kind of parameters is by obtaining the right feedback. So how do you obtain that feedback? Yeah. So in terms of obtaining the feedback from this system, we say the multi-raters, the same as the 360, is you can use a questionnaire in collecting the feedback from the multi-raters. They'll tell you what they feel. You know, this is a planning stage. So the questionnaire will ask the participant to rate the individual according to observed behaviors, usually managerial or business specific competencies, which you have already defined. Because if you don't define them, people can define them for themselves and it becomes very ambiguous. It becomes when you're preparing your report, you don't even know how to rate it. You don't even know how to make this, how to report, how to make the report objective. Therefore, this process of obtaining feedback is usually more company specific. And that's why I said, out of those parameters, ask yourself, what works for me? What works for our organization? And you can do that by just having a simple questionnaire. Like you can see before, insert your feedback from heading, appraiser name, date, feedback, applicable. I hope you guys can see the screen.
We can.
Thank you, thank you. So this is just a sample of the questionnaire of what you can have in place to help you get feedback. And you can also have feedback questions, which we can have various questions on what you can ask. You can ask something like, what elements of your job do you find most difficult? You know, what sort of training or experiment would you benefit for your next year? This helps you in terms of planning your training development plan for maybe the next year, 2023. What action can be taken to improve your performance in your current position by you or your boss? You know, because maybe it is me, or maybe there's something I need more from my boss. There's a gap that I feel I don't have. He's very good in terms of communication. I would want him to mentor me on one or two things. What do you like or dislike about working for this organization? Very critical, especially if you're looking at your customer satisfaction. And you see, when you talk about customer, you're talking about the internal customer. In this case, these are the employee. So you need to know what is it that they like about it, this organization. What is it that they don't like? Then you're able to implement strategies that are going to ensure that the next time you undertake the same survey, the things that they didn't like, actually, no, they're saying these are the things they like. So these are where you're able to get feedback. And when you're administering the questionnaire, you can have various types of doing it, you know. You can have a scale system, you can have open-ended questionnaires, you can have a distribution, you can have collection. And if it's a scale, if a scale, you have like a scale of 1 to 5, you can define. Some people will have 1 to 4, others will have 1 to 3. And like I said, whatever works for your organization, implement what works best for you. I know some of us HR people, you'll be like, hey, do you have this system in place? Yes, you do. You want to implement, maybe it worked for my organization, but for you to work in your organization, to work in your system, you need to tweak it a little bit. So it's always important to tweak some of these things in a way that they support our system. Then we have the open-ended questionnaires. We have the distribution, whereby you distribute the questionnaires throughout the company. If you have an intranet, you can use that intranet. You can use the business emails. If they don't have, you can print and distribute accordingly, then have a very good collection point whereby you collect all the questionnaires. And in most cases, we'll do it through our department, that is the HR department, and prepare our document or a report on that. In terms of the performance evaluation ratings, we all know what this means, outstanding. This should be clearly outstanding, yeah? This is the highest possible, because you'll find, and there's at times you find we have the rating committees to rationalize. You can find like one of the supervisors has rated everybody in their department has outstanding performance. However, from the business perspective, that department, there's so many gaps on it. So how do you rationalize? Ensure if you give somebody exceeding, for real, it's exceeding. If they exceed expectations, let it be. And this is what is defined. And ensure that this is well defined on your tool, so that me as a supervisor, I know if I rate somebody exceeds expectation, it's for real that this rating is given to an employee who exceeds high overall performance. They go beyond what is expected in order to surpass all the key performance expectations. So ensure that for real, even if I come as a HR person, I'm asking you, why did you rate Irene as having exceeded expectations? It is very objective. I can see from the standards that you set. I can see from how they've performed. I can see for real, they're supposed to be here, but for real, they have exceeded. But you don't tell me somebody has performed so poorly on the objectives, but on the rating is otherwise. And that's why the TIL needs to be very objective. Meets expectations. They're fully successful in meeting all the performance expectations, goals that are important to his or her job. Needs improvement. That's a red. This rating is given to an employee who sometimes perform at an acceptable level, but not consistent, and needs improvement to meet expectations. So what mechanisms are you going to put in place? What is the development plan that you're going to put in place for this employee? Does not meet expectations. And based on your criteria, based on the system that you have, then you've defined. And in case your performance is, your bonuses are based on your performance management. You find most organizations will agree, if somebody has an outstanding performance, they'll get 100 or 120 performance bonus, you know, if somebody has it, so you define the rewards accordingly. But like I said, this is based on your organization and the capability of the organization, and of course, based on the budget that you have in place. Okay. Then the various appraisals that are involved in the 360 degrees, and I think this is, we have discussed this into details. We discussed that in terms of the superiors. One, we need to be able to observe and measure all that entails at work. We should be trained, coaching and developing employees. We should know how to evaluate our performance employees. If it's a self, that's a person, and all of us are candidates of this, because if you have this system, we'll also have to do what? To evaluate ourselves and what is our contribution. So as highlighted, it's useful in the entire process management, and a key factor of this self-assessment is the development needs of the employee, because most employee feels that self-rating contribute to a greater or a very great extent to fair and well-rounded performance appraisal. Yeah, that's why it's very, very important to embrace the self-appraisal. Precaution. Like I said earlier, in most cases, we tend to, if you're told to appraise yourself, you'll tend to overrate yourself. However, it is our role as HR to ensure that we moderate it in such a way that even if I'd appraise myself very highly, then we have very objective and open conversations, open communication, and I'm able to see, but there for real, I rated myself as exceeding, but actually where I am right now, I think I just meet the expectations. So it's very important for us to have that balance. In terms of the peers, we said it's very important because we're able to evaluate our peers and we're able to eliminate the biases that may come up. However, we also need to be very cautious in terms of how it's done, because we need to keep everything in confidentiality. We also need to be very familiar with the team members' tasks and responsibilities, because if you tell me to rate my peer and I don't even know what they do, trust me, I'll just be evaluating based on what I understand. So it's very important to ensure that when we embrace this system, they all understand and we also give them time because it can be very, very time consuming. And if you don't give them ample time, then it compromises the objectivity of the process. And the subordinates, the same way, like we said earlier, they feel very important when you make them part of the system. However, we also need to be conscious that the confidentiality is well maintained, because if we don't do that, then some superiors may feel threatened, and they may perceive that the authority has been undermined. And especially if the culture, like I said earlier, if your culture does not embrace some of these emerging systems, then you can be assured that after this process, then some of them will have they'll start reacting to the whole process. So it's very important to ensure that these are your co-chairs, that they don't feel this way. It's important that the subordinates are praising elements which they have knowledge. Yeah. If I'm praising somebody, let me know what I'm doing. Let me not go and start asking things that are very irrelevant to the whole system. And this, like I said earlier, and like he can emphasizing, it's all based on the tool that you have in place. So the tool is what will determine how your process will be and the success of this process. The customers, also very important, the customers' feedback. In case we do the 360 degrees, like I said, we have both internal customers and external customers, and you look at the customer feedback to serve as an anchor for almost all the performance factors, because everything we're doing because of our customer, be it internal, be it external. So it's a clear anchor that, are we achieving what you're supposed to be doing? Are we adding value to this customer that you're supposed to be serving? Yeah. So very, very important. However, we need to be conscious that we value the customer feedback inappropriate for evaluating team output. Let's evaluate it. Okay, we know we say the customer is always right, but let's evaluate what they have said. And of course, it's time consuming, so we really need to dedicate time for it and plan for it accordingly. So having looked at that, then we look at the feedback appraisal, which is very important, how you give feedback. And you can look at these three. This is a feedback. Look at the face. They're smiling. Look at this employee. He's looking like he's really sad. However, when you're giving feedback, as much you may have the self-reflection, it's good when you give a feedback in a positive. How you post, how are you as you're giving this feedback? Are you giving feedback and making the employee feel like he's the head of the world? Or are you giving feedback with hope? I tell people, even if it's negative feedback, give feedback with a sense of hope that there is always room for improvement, and you're going to help them, you're going to mentor them, you're going to coach them, you're going to do everything possible, you're going to provide them with the tools that they require. Because at times, maybe you require somebody to prepare for you reports that are very complex. And as a management, as an organization, you don't want to invest in management, in systems that generate complex reports. You expect some reports to come maybe from the basic Excel, So it also depends, have you invested rightly before you? So give them feedback in a way that gives them hope. Yeah. And we all agree that once you have an appraisal, we'll always have three scenarios. Yeah. And all of us, I know we are this is part of us, especially when you're going through the appraisal system. There's a time we're very busy because somebody's like, no, I don't believe what my boss told me. So there'll be those who will be very happy, because they are very satisfied and they feel, wow, I'm doing the right thing, and they know now maybe a promotion is coming, a good bonus is coming. There are those who feel it's satisfactory, but based on what I discussed with my boss, I don't know if nothing good is coming from her. And now we have the other employees whose performance is unsatisfactory, but there's hope, we can correct it. And this is what I'm saying, as you give feedback, let's give feedback with hope. And when you look at the rating, we have the reds. It can be a red whereby for real, this person is willing, they have the willpower, they have the right attitude, because attitude is everything. They take positive feedback, we can correct it. However, it's very unfortunate, but at times you have some employees, as much as you want, you've tried, you've put them under the PIP, you put them under development, but nothing is changing. So unfortunately, you have to release them. So performance appraisal comes with its own pluses and things that we as HR, as human capital, we have to embrace. And when they have to come, then we have to be ready for it. And we have to be very objective on how we deal with all these people. Because at the end of the day, it is our role of ensuring that the management of the business is able to achieve what they want to achieve through that system, through us. So somehow you just have to look and come up with something that is going to work, okay? Then, and based on what comes up, then we need to ask ourselves very hard questions or points that we as managers, as we train the managers, that we should keep in mind when you're conducting the appraisal interview. So some of that will be like one, let me just put them all of them there, is he should be direct and specific. Don't beat around the bush, because already we have a standard. Be specific. We're talking about recruitment. We're talking about sales. We expected the sales to grow by 20%. They've only grown by 10%. Let's not just go through around, they'll come, they start saying, like this month, I don't know what, just be specific. Because like we said, it's time consuming, excuse me. So how you manage that time is very, very important. Never get personal. In appraisal, put your personal attire separate. Don't get personal. You should encourage the employee to talk as well. The conversation should be two-way. Don't be the supervisor who comes into appraisal and you're the only person who's talking. You rate, you give feedback, you conclude, you summarize, and you sign, and you say thank you. Engage the employee. And now we are going through this is because we are the people who are going to help the other line managers implement. So as we train them, let them train them. Let's train them in the right way. Because if you don't train them that you need to also engage the employee, they'll just be thinking appraisal is a one way, is a one channel. It's supposed to be two ways. And in most cases, they say an effective appraisal is where the employee even talks more. Yours is just being specific, direct, like I said, direct and specific. So how do you think you performed on this rating? I see you've performed, you've rated yourself as exceeded. Why do you think you've exceeded? They'll explain to you. Then from you, since you've already also done your own appraisal, for you, you know what point they are, and you give them the facts. You're specific. Then after that, you're supposed to develop an action plan from the information that you have gathered. However, there's some cases where employee may be highly resentful of the appraisal results. This would amount to such employee being highly defensive. So what do? You should, one, appreciate that. This is very normal. However, you should never attack. Let's train our line managers. Let's train the supervisors. Don't attack. Understand. And I always tell people, in case you start an appraisal meeting, and there's a lot of defensive, there's a lot of attack, and this person starts, it is okay to postpone. Whereby you as a supervisor, you feel like you're actually losing it, or you're not getting headway because this person is just coming with a defensive, and you've tried the best you can. It is okay to postpone the appraisal. And you tell the staff, well, I think we need to, we can reschedule this for another day, because maybe that person maybe that's one of their bad days, you never know. So also be objective in the whole process, because at the end of the day, you don't want to have an appraisal where this person never listen because they're just defensive. However, that as a supervisor is also something that you as a person will ask yourself, what can I do to ensure that this person comes from the defensive level to an understanding level? So now that's when their communication skills come in place. How are you communicating to them when they're defensive? Are you also going defensive? No, you start like get into a shouting match. Yeah. So those are the conversations that you also need to have as a person, also as a supervisor, and also have those conversations with people who will be evaluating the other people. Because we all agree that feedback is a type of communication whereby we give and get. So if they're giving you defense and shouting and you start shouting, trust me, then that will not be an effective communication. So you need to evaluate and see where it's going. Because we say it's very, very critical in terms of having honest relationships. Because if I come for appraisal and we can't agree and we're just shouting at each other, even for me as an employee, I will feel discouraged and I'll not even have faith in you. I'll be like, oh, my boss, even if I tell him or I tell her, they don't listen, they already formed an opinion, you know? So you really have to ensure that you do it in the right way so that people can be able to also have trust in the process. And how do you do it? What are these types of feedback that you can give so at least you have the buy-in of the staff? One, you need to be indirect. Okay, these are the negative ones. Yeah, in terms of feedback. And these are the things that will make people not have trust in us. You're indirect, you're general, you don't tell them what it is. It's like, I really don't like the way you handle that customer. You don't tell me what it is. Is it that I talked to them badly? Is it that the time I kept them waiting? Is it that, what is it? So for me, I'll go asking myself, what did my boss say? I mean, why? They just want to, you know, they lose that one because you're not specific. You're telling me, I treated the customer. The customer I've been the customer for 1 hour. You don't tell me what it's in. Being insensitive. Attacking people, you know, don't just attack people. I'm in the middle of talking to a customer like, no, Irene, don't say that. Wait, you know, you attack. Trust me, even you, and I always tell people, treat people that you want them to treat you. So as you train our line managers, let them know this. Being disrespectful, poor timing. Timing is everything. I'm in the middle of a crisis, and that's when you're giving somebody feedback, negative feedback. Trust me, even if they're from heaven, they're not going to take it positively. Impulsive. You don't care, you know, judgmental. And some of us, you're also very selfish. So how do you give feedback that is positive, in a positive way? One, give it in a supportive way. Give it in a helpful way. Be descriptive. Yes, I really don't like how you treat that customer because I feel like you're too fast. You didn't explain the form. You just gave them the form. You know, let me describe what I didn't do right so that next time I'm going to do it in a proper way. Be sensitive with how you give this feedback. Be considerate because one, this feedback is not meant to demean. It is meant to build. It is meant to develop me. Don't threaten me. I don't like that you talk to customers. I think it's like you don't even, you know the people who will tell you things to demean you, but give feedback in a hopeful way, in a way that I will feel, wow. It's like, Irene, thank you so much. I saw you talk to that customer. However, I feel maybe there's what do you think we could have done different? Let me also be part of that. I'm like, oh, you consider what I'm doing. You appreciate that I'm dealing with this customer, but you want us to make it better. So I'll be like, wow, yes, what can we do? Let's move together. Be direct. Healthy timing. Timing is everything. I'm in the middle of a customer, dealing with the customer. You come and call me up and like, I really don't like the way you're talking to that customer. I wish you can be a little bit, trust me, and you expect me to go back to that customer. Everybody, they've been wired. Chances are, when I go back to that customer, I'll be feeling very intimidated. I'll be scared because I'm like, now what do I do? You know, okay, of course, there are those situations whereby you as a supervisor has to intervene, but how do you intervene? Do you intervene in a professional way? Or do you intervene in a way that you demean this person? And tomorrow, even when this customer comes, I'll be like, oh, this customer, whatever the witness my supervisor demeaned me last time, I'm even afraid of managing them. Be thoughtful. And of course, be specific on what you're giving. And that way, then you'll be able to give that feedback. And also, by using that effective way of giving feedback, then you're also able to get it back. They also get you feedback because if you're very objective with what you tell me, I'll also be objective in what I'm going to give. And I'm also going to be very positive in terms of the feedback I'm getting from other people. And I'll be able to embrace the system. I'll be able to embrace whatever we want to achieve. I'll be able to communicate and verify issues that maybe I'm not clear on. And that way, our communication will be very effective. And the objectives that we want to achieve, we'll achieve them together as a team. So in terms of giving feedback, how will we ensure that the feedback is open? One, be open and welcome people's feedback and questions. As much as you're giving this employee, even you, allow it, be open to feedback. And I said, feedback is what makes us to be what we are. Be aware of nonverbal communication, especially as you're going through an appraisal. As you give feedback, look at this person, how they're behaving. You can easily tell. There's some people, they'll treat, you know, they say non-verbal communication communicates more. Ask questions were not clear. Paraphrase the speaker to convey that you have listened and understood. It feels very nice. Oh, you said the customer was this and this? Okay. I, as the employee, is like, well, okay, so my boss is listening to me. My supervisor is listening to me. Paraphrase. Because at the end of the day, you want to have objectivity. It is your system, it is your process. You want to see it succeed. But if you're just there, you don't get feedback, you're not positive about it, and you'll be like, people are not supporting me. I've put on so much effort, and you'll go home very frustrated. Try and receive feedback in a way that people feel that they're part of it. And once you do that, trust me, you'll not have issues in terms of the whole process, in terms of the performance appraisal. However, the other issues apart from feedback that can come up and can be problems in terms of this appraisal system. So which are these problems? One, and we'll only have these people always talk about every process, and I don't know that it applies to most of you. Anything that you want to do, people will be like, it's time consuming. It's the most costly type of appraisal process. Me, I used to do this in my previous place. Why are you bringing this? It's shocking me. I've never seen this. Process is counterproductive. You know, all these negative things will come up. But it's up to you to sell it, because this is an item. This is like it's like in the market trying to sell something. So it is your process. So look at these problems. And like I said, if you want something to succeed, look at the problems, look at the disadvantages, and know that everybody is looking at that, because unfortunately, most people tend to look at the negative side, then work from that. Yeah. Somebody come and say, it's not favored by the employees who find favor with the boss, because they're like, no, I know the boss has been giving me a good rating. If you do the 360, and everybody knows I'm being favored by the boss, what will happen? My peers will rate me negative. So these are problems that you need to anticipate will be there. So how do you address them? Address them ahead of time. Tell people, we know these are the problems that we may have. So as you undertake this process, what are we going to do so that these problems don't affect the implementation of this process? Okay. Subordinates tend to never provide a negative feedback to seniors. How do I tell my boss that I don't like the way they talk to me? Say, I'll be fired tomorrow. So these are the problems. Yet you want an objective process. So anticipate these problems, then also tell them the problems that you anticipate so that they know, oh, it's not unique to me. It's not unique to me that I feel afraid talking to my boss. And once you do that, trust me, it's going to be very
Can't hear any sound. I don't know whether it's on my end only.
Yeah, she's it's like something.
Yeah, it just went quiet. I think we've lost her.
Yeah, because when her screen has disappeared, so maybe she's offline.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello?
Back.
Hello?
Hello.
Are you back?
Yes, I'm back. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what happened to something went wrong, so sorry for that. So let me share my screen. You can see my screen?
Not yet on my end, but it says it's starting. Okay, great. Okay,
Yes.
that's visible now.
It's visible. Okay, so that's where we were, right? So we continue to the next objective as we conclude. These are the sources of errors in performance appraisal. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
thank you, thank you. So these are the errors, and I'm sure these are some of the things that we've actually, so this is more of a summary of what we've been going through in terms of the discussions that we've had. So the errors that we may have in the performance appraisal, which I believe we are well aware or have really discussed them. So we can look at them. Okay. We have the central tendency, and this is more like whereby a supervisor feels they want to show, you'll find that some supervisors want to show that everybody in their group performed, unclear standards, halo effect, the performance preferences, prejudice and biasness, and discrimination. And I think this is something that I've really discussed intensively as we are going through our discussions. Then we have licency. I think we all understand what all that is all about. Then there's something I want us to just have a look at, and this is the information and the results that we obtain. And because there are several areas about which information is gathered while you're using this system for appraising of our employees. So some of such areas are shown in this image. And the things that you want to really pick is one, the development areas, what is not clear, the strengths and the hidden strengths. And like for all of us who have the understanding of the Johari's window, so this is more what you're looking for when you're trying to embrace the 360 degrees, because we find that most people have a lot of hidden strengths that we don't know. So if you're able to pick them up and embrace them and build them, then you can be assured that you're going to develop and ensure that people are well embraced in our systems. Also, we also want to look at the behaviors and their results. And the following matrix can help us in terms of the behavior. We are looking at the job fit, new to job, the technical skills. What are they doing to retain them? Like you can see, we have like a chart. So you're able to map your people. Then based on the system that you have in place, then you need to agree, how do you rate, and how do you ensure that once you're done with the whole process, then you're able to have like a dashboard. You're able to see, these are people who fit for the jobs. These are people who need to be developed. These are people who require more time in terms of what they're doing. Which group is difficult? So this just helps you in terms of mapping or in terms of developing a tool that will best work for your organization. Then the last one, the second last one, objective is explaining the development options. What options do we have in terms of developing? And you can see from this matrix, once you've undergone through the process, you can have the formal ones and the informal development processes or options. In terms of formal, we look at the training. Maybe this person needs to be trained. They have a gap. Maybe they came in and started as a junior level and they feel they don't want to get at a certain level. Like now we all know we have now the certification in terms of HR. They don't want to become a lead. They want to come into leadership of HR. So they need to go for a course in. They need to go for it. They need to upgrade the education and get to be satisfied and do what they need to do. We also have some training in terms of distance learning. Maybe somebody, because of the nature of their work, they're not able to go to a classroom setup. And I think if there's anything that COVID has come and has shown us is that you really don't have to go to class to learn. So they can undertake a distant learning, In terms of experience, how do we help? We can have the job enrichment. I want to know what this other person does. And the beauty of the job enrichment is because it brings in a sense of extra responsibility. And the moment you enrich me, when you come to the job rotation, whereby today, maybe based on how the structure is, you'll find there's someone who deals with compensation, there's someone who deals with recruitment, there's someone who deals with training. So if I'm rotated, then I'm able to understand all the attributes of the HR. Yeah, and especially if you want to become a generalist. And by that rotation, I'm able to know this is my strength. I think I'm very good in training. I think I'm very good in recruitment. And I think I'm very good in terms of compensation and benefits. I'm good at working at figures. I'm doing those surveys. So it helps. Then also the job transfers. Let people get to understand if you have branches, transfer them. You know, if somebody, maybe I'm in HR, but I'm very good in terms of PR. You have a PR department and I can do that, then let's have this transfer. Then we have the informal, and the informal, that is where we come in, and we really have to be very strong as HR practitioners. One, the coaching. Are people well coached? Do we embrace the 360 feedback system? Are we mentoring? The individual team and team assignment, teaching others, networking. Networking, like I said, is key because you get to know what other people are doing. Yep. And the style of assessment, how are we assessing ourselves? And once we do that, then you're going to ensure that whatever we input in terms of feedback, we have the right output. Yes, because we'll be having output from all places. We're going to get all the attributes, all the everything, pick up everything that comes out. Don't ignore anything that has come, because everything has some value in it. Try and look for it and embrace it. And from there, you're able to define and prepare programs that well fit and able to support the system as you're supposed to do it. And when you look at the feedback input and the report outputs, you've gotten the feedback, they now have that report. And this is what the senior management will be interested in. Because everybody will have their own perception, the manager, the external, the direct, and the internal. So it is your role to ensure that in your report, you're very well able to articulate the strengths and the development opportunities. You're able to articulate how leadership behavior is impacting the others. You're able to articulate your performance, the performance of the employees against the business competencies. And you're also able to articulate how you compare the self-perception against what others perceive me. Let that be very clear. Irene, this is what you think about yourself. This is what others think about yourself. Let's discuss that. Have objective conversations with the employees, because that is the only way you'll be able to tell that your report output is having an impact. That's how you're able to measure the impact of your process. Because they say, if you have something and you can't measure the impact, then trust me, tomorrow you bring another project, they'll be like, even the other one even didn't feel anything. So ensure there's an impact. And the only way to enable an impact is having a report that is objective, a report that on top of the report has some recommendations, and people can see for real I'm moving forward. Okay. So what are regardless, you may have all those good things, but in everything, we know there are challenges. So what are these challenges for this system? The 360-degree feedback. So the kind of systems, we have the challenges that we have will, one, the lack of sufficient information, especially as you begin, as you start the process. Because guys, let's embrace the learning curve. You don't expect excellent results from your first when you start it. But as you continue, then since people have the sufficient information, since they know what they require to do, then it continues building up. It should not be used in lieu of the performance management. Like I said, performance management is a system. It's an ongoing. So this is just a tool to embrace and to enhance your performance management. So don't forget everything is about performance management. Don't forget anything about your strategic direction, because now you have this 360. It is not the performance management system still needs to be embraced. The process may not be successful where there is workplace overload. You need to plan for it so that everybody, and you also balance. Because again, I've had situations whereby people will say, hey Charles, you have so many projects. Mnakuja na hii project, mko na ingine, and people have a lot of work to do. So you have to stagger them in such a way that they have enough time, okay? The process may not be successful when there is unethical behavior in the organization. I cannot reemphasize the culture. Supervisors should not feel that the 360-degree is being forced upon them. Let them get a buy-in. It's a challenge to avoid the feedback being requested by employees. You just have somehow, this is a challenge that you anticipate. So you as a HR person, what are you going to do? It is important that the respondents should know how to provide constructive feedback. This comes in training people who are going to appraise. Do I know how to give constructive feedback? The process may not be successful when it's simply implemented as fed without systematic support. You always have to have support for that system. The 360-degree feedback should be connected to organization, leadership, strategy. I think I talked about it very well, whereby you have to ensure that you're in line with your strategic plan. Otherwise, you'll be going west when others are going south. So this is just a brief or a summary on the strategies for successful 360 feedback, and which that I think of, since you'll have, once you're able to go to the internet and you go to the log, you're able to access it. So this helps you in terms of, in case you're implementing the system, what are you going to do? What strategies are you going to put in place? And like you realize, this is more of a summary of what we've been discussing through the sessions. So the strategies continue, but key, and I would say, train the appraisers. Training is everything, getting it right. Because if they don't get it right, then trust me, you're open up to frustrations. Some organization, like we said, one of the challenges is that there's a lot of paperwork. Some of the organizations have embraced the online 360-degree feedback. And for me, this is the way, as an organization, as you start it, have this in mind that at the end of it, I would want to have an online, because online is real time. It makes things very easy. It makes the discussions real time. Even for you as from a HR perspective, you're able to monitor and see, is it working? Are people, have their appraisal started? As opposed to, you have to wait until they bring all the documents, you have to see, you tally, these ones have brought 10, this ones are, but when you have an online, it's a real time, and you're able to be able to monitor it real time and get the feedback as you'd want it. So as you want, in case you embrace the online, there's some of the factors that you need to have in place. One, you need to understand your system requirements, the user requirements, because again, if your people don't know how to use the systems, then that also becomes a drawback. The competency framework and the questionnaire, very critical. What framework do you have in place? And this framework, is it well understood? The giving of feedback, is it well defined in the system? Receiving of feedback, and how do you administer that process? The security, very, very critical. The line managers need to buy it in and understand it. And since the people are going to be working with the system, and above it all, its capability of generating the reports, because reports is the output of the whole system. And that is the only way you're able to be able to talk to the management and tell them, this is what we've done in terms of this is, I mean, some of the 360 feedback, because if they have invested in the system and you don't have reports, then how do you give feedback? So you have to ensure that it has the reports at the point of you defining the system requirements. One of the critical requirements should be the generation of reports. So as I conclude, there's something that we call the 720-degree feedback. We've discussed intensively about the 360-degree. So these are new, it may be a new term to some of us. So I just want to give you a brief of what it is. And the 720-degree feedback, like the 360, has two viewpoints. One is that the appraiser is involved and the continuous improvement of the appraisal. So it's more of a build-up of the 360 degrees. So in terms of the appraiser, I don't know what has happened, so just give me a second. In terms of the appraiser, is that we know in the traditional 360 feedback, the raters include the supervisor. Are we on the same ground? Select. Are you able to see my slide on the 720-degree feedback?
No.
Don't worry, it's okay. Just give me a second, I get you there. Now you can see?
Yes.
Okay. So in the traditional 360 degrees is whereby we have the supervisors, the peers, immediate, and subordinates. However, in the 540 appraisal, we add more external customers and suppliers. So from here we are learning, we have the 360, we have the 540 and 720. So in the 720, we now get feedback from external sources and other stakeholders, including family, suppliers, and communities. Okay, very interesting. Then there's also the continuous improvement of appraisal, because in this mechanism, the feedback after the main 360, so it's like it's a build-up. And like I said, an appraisal system or performance measure system that we put in place is based on your business. Maybe the kind of business that you do, assume is a community-based. And you deal with communities, maybe like it's an NGO. So you may embrace the 720 so that you can be able to reach that person who is in the community, that beneficiary, who is not basically on the forefront, who is not part of, and able to know, are they really getting what they're supposed to be getting? So ideally, that is what it is all about. The 720, it goes from the 760, it goes a step further to be able to get feedback from other people on how you're performing. So that is just a brief introduction of the 720 degrees feedback, because today we're all concentrating on the 360. So I thought it's always good to give something like a food for thought, like this 720 feedback. I would want to learn more about it. So that is just like a brief intro on what it is all about. So as you conclude, I would want us to just think and reflect on a case study that I have. And this is about an organization that has been facing a lot of issues in its performance appraisal. This is whereby the employees are not happy at all with the ratings given by their supervisors. And that leads them to believe and feel that they're being underrated, thus they're very demotivated. So I want to pose a question to all of us. And the first question I want to pose is, how can implementing the 360-degree feedback help the organization tackle this situation? So that's a question. And I'm going to ask, I want to look at the list. Is anybody who would want to give us one or two insights on what the organization can do to improve, or do I pick? So volunteer, I always prefer volunteers. It works best when people volunteer.
I can volunteer.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Number one, how can, number one anyway, how can implementing 360-degree help Globers tackle this situation? I see if the employees are not happy with the ratings given by the supervisors, then maybe there's a gap in training of the supervisors to understand the performance appraisal tool. Yeah, so lots of training, and also maybe training not only of supervisors, also the employees to understand, what the rating system is, what is expected of them, the standard set, the targets to be met, how they'll be rated, so they understand and ask questions about it to get clarity. And that way now they'll be able to, embrace it and know exactly what they are being appraised against. And the employees also feel that they're being underrated and are demotivated. Yeah, I think what has stood out from your training is getting buy-in by everybody. So when HR involves all the employees, yeah, to understand this tool, and to also give help them make suggestions, comments, participate. Like you've said, the 360 degrees involves is it a rating committee? That too, that is well trained, that can able to know how to implement this tool, helps a lot in people now, employees feeling that at least there's it's not biased in any way. It's rated by people who've been well trained, who will understand the tool, and hence will help them understand, embrace, and be motivated with the outcome, especially when there's a development plan, an action plan regarding the training and development to fill in the weak areas that they have. That makes employees feel, motivated that something is being done in areas they're not performing well, to enable them to perform better. Thank you so much.
Oh, excellent. That is nice. Thank you so much. You didn't tell us your name?
My name is Maxi Watanga.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that insight. Any other input from someone else who'd want to add? I think that was very well articulated. Anyone else, please? Yes, Jane, you want to say something?
Thank you for volunteering me. I think I want to address the issue where you said what you've asked about question number 2. What are the factors that Globus needs to consider before implementing a 360-degree feedback system? I think if you go back to the initial conversations when we started, I think the culture of organization is very, very important. I think when you have a 360 degrees or you want to implement it, do we have a trust culture in this organization where we want to implement? Or are you working in those environments where you have everything is toxic, people want to get ahead of each other? So you'll find that even it won't add value because people don't want to give a good rating or to give good feedback to team members because they want to get ahead of them, Are there clear systems? Do we even have anything, any form of performance system before you even start the 360? Can you start from somewhere? You did mention, can you even start small before you grow big? Can you even start from a maybe checklist form of performance before you grow into this 360? I think that's my contribution.
Absolutely, Jane. Thank you so much. Yeah, start from somewhere. And I think we can reemphasize the need of culture. Culture is everything. So thank you for that. I can see someone else wants to give some comment. And thanks, Jane, for taking us to question number 2. But I'll open it up in case you have input for either question number 1 or question number 2. Kindly feel free, because this is now we'll be able to pick up and we also learn and see what you can be able to do, because these are the problems that we have in our organizations, and some of us are also in the process of trying to implement some of these systems or other systems. So Robert, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to, in addition to what has been said about the first question, I think part of the things that the company can undertake is to look at the appraisal as a process. The same way we learned that it should not be an end, whereby there's continual updating and continuous engagement with the employees on how they are faring on. So this will prevent someone being surprised at the end of the appraisal period that these are my ratings. But I think if it's taken as a continuous process, then they should be able to know where they're doing well and where do they need to improve before the end of the appraisal period. So that will ensure that they also feel part and parcel of the process as it goes along. Thank you.
Absolutely, Robert, I agree with you. Have it continuous, whereby don't wait until the end of the month, the end of the year. That's when you're praising people. Let it be continuous, so at least they feel they're part of the process. They feel they're part of the car as it's moving, right? So thank you so much for that. Anybody else still open? And let's hear from those who maybe who've had the real, maybe you're talking about an organization, but maybe there's one of us here who's had this kind of a problem, and they can tell us specifically what they did that worked from them, so that some of us who are here and they need solutions, we can be picking them up from the real-time examples. So I'll open it up back to you guys. Still volunteer. Any other volunteer? Or anybody would want to add anything in terms of the whole process and what we've been through today in terms of the 360-degree feedback system? Before I give the final slide on the summary, then I hand it over to our host. Okay. So based on that, I think I want to really appreciate the input, and from what we've heard from the 3-4 participants, based on the case study that we have in hand, very insightful. And it's my prayer that we can continue embracing some of these good practices. And as we conclude, is just to have a summary on what we've learned in this module. So you can see my screen. So the key things that we've summarized in terms of a module is one, is for us to understand that the 360-degree feedback system is a systematic collection and feedback of performance data of an individual or a group, and is derived from a number of stakeholders in their performance. It's also an appraisal system that is used to improve the managerial effectiveness by providing the manager with a more complete assessment of the employee effectiveness, their performance, and development needs. It's also known as a multi-rater feedback, multi-source feedback, full circle appraisal, or group performance review. And the 4 key integral components of this appraisal system or feedback system is one, we have the self-appraisal. This is whereby an employee will appraise himself. We have the supervisor's appraisal, where they are appraised by their supervisor. We have the subordinate appraisal, where people who report to you appraise you. We have the peer appraisal. This is whereby one is appraised by their peers. And I think for us to be able to achieve this, I cannot summarize it better than what my colleagues have said, but we have to ensure that we have the right tools in place. We train people, supervisors and employees, let them understand, let them have a buy-in. And above all things, let's ensure that we have the right culture in place, a culture that is going to embrace this system, a culture that embraces trust, a culture that embraces honesty, a culture that embraces feedback in a positive way, whichever feedback, whether positive or otherwise, let them embrace it in the right way. And also let's have a culture that we believe in the continuous communication. Let's embrace a system that is continuous. Someone is kindly mute. Let's embrace a continuous kind of a system whereby we have these frequent conversations with our employees, with the people we supervise, because those conversations, those communications are what will reflect, they'll be reflected on the final appraisal. So if you don't have these communications, I can assure you, the moment you have your final appraisal, there'll be a lot of defensiveness. So let's have these continuous discussions. And like we also agreed is that ensure that we work with what works best for us. Don't embrace what company A has. It may work best for them, but not for us. So let's start small in the best way that we can, and we build up on it. So for me, I think that's all I would have to say. And I do wish you all the best. And I also want to really appreciate all of you for being very participative. I've enjoyed the interactions, and I can say I've learned also from you. I've learned one or two things. And it's my prayer that what we've learned today, it's something that we can be able to embrace. And I love and appreciate the positive, I can see from the chats, the very nice comments. I do appreciate that. And like the host has shared on the chat, you can be able to subscribe to the YouTube channel and can be able to watch this in case there's an area that you're not very clear on. I'm sure you can be able to now go through it in a way that when you feel like you want to pause, you can pause. So kindly just check on the chat and you'll be able to see that. In terms of communication, I believe you're all logged in. So in case you need to get in touch with us, then we have a form of, there's a channel of communication. So kindly, let's always engage in that. Otherwise, thank you very, very much for your time. And I feel honored to have been the person taking you through this. And now in all humbleness, I hand you over to our host. Thank you once more, and God bless you all. Thank you. Okay, our host, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Irene, you are such a wonderful trainer. I've been listening through as you dissected the 360 degrees feedback. And well, one thing I've noted is that you have got mastery of content. I may be wrong, but what do you think, Rose Motesh? Unmute yourself, Rose.
Her, because of her training, have gotten a lot of knowledge from her. The way I entered this training, it is not the way I have come out. Thank you so much, Irene. You are a really wonderful trainer. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Now, thank you, Rose. Jane Wanjohi. You know, Jane Wanjohi, we started with you a long time ago. And, can you put your video on?
Oh, I'm definitely going to put my video on. I'm on and about as I'm training. I'm on and about. Today is a Saturday. You know, you're always on and about. I had a feeling you were going to call me out today. Thank you, Irene. I think I've really enjoyed it. Some of the things were confirmations of things we already know, but the way you articulated, the examples you were using were real time, they were authentic. And yeah, thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. It was good that you gave us a neat bit to think about when you brought in the 720. But I had a question that I didn't get a chance to ask. And I don't know whether it's too late to ask. Am I allowed to ask then?
Yes, you are. The trainer is pleasant.
I really want to find out your
trainer.
Not only the trainer.
Not only the trainer who is pleasant, but a lot of very serious professionals are here. Okay. So let's hear you out.
Yeah. So Irene, I wanted to find out your take on the global shift towards performance management, or you have big organizations like the Accenture, General Electric, and Deloitte and stuff, where they have actually kind of ditched performance management, the traditional known performance management of rating people. I mean, there's a survey that an organization can use up to 2 million hours in a year just doing performance management, trying to rate, bringing the calibration process to sense check results. So what they're doing now is forward looking. I mean, traditionally, we've always had performance to look back what you have done, but it's more forward looking, having daily and frequent conversation without giving rates and points, and just building on coaching so that people are more engaged. There's no anxiety, there's no stresses of wanting to wait for a 5-point rating and and all the things that come out of that. What are your thoughts for those organizations? Because they seem to be doing very well. If you follow, the engagement levels and the staff morale has gone up. I mean, if they give the volumetrics for the same, what do you think?
Okay, thank you so much, Judy. I love that, the insights. And what I think, oh, sorry, Jane. Oh, I'm sorry,
Jane
Jane.
Wanjohi.
Thanks, Jane Wanjohi. Sorry for the misunderstanding of your name. My thinking is in terms of performance management, I would say in terms we use different names for different acronyms. I mean, just a name. Because if you realize most of the organization right now, we are all embracing the staff engagement. And that is something that you've brought up. And when you look at these leading global organizations, they've really embraced the staff engagement. But if you critically critique it, it's part of a performance management, but now twickled in another way. So whereby you say we talk about the continuous conversations, the daily discussions. You want to know what is happening. But now you also have something, at the end of the day, everything has to be documented. So I would say it is a performance, is it an advanced kind of performance management? And that's why you realize, if you look at the traditional performance appraisal that we did in the past, for those organizations that started them, like let's say like 10 years ago, you'd find you'll have a performance management, even like after 2 years, and you're doing the performance management. But with time, it has evolved. Look even at how the government, we have the performance contracting. They didn't have that before, but it's still a form of performance management. So for me, I agree with you, whereby we have this, I'd call them, for lack of a better word, maybe the old school of doing the performance management. But for us as HR professionals, we need to be on track. We need to look at the trends that are there, and we see how to embrace them to be able to fit into our performance management system. And like I said in my presentation, is that what works for your organization, embrace it. There's an organization, if you start like staff engagement, like now most evolving, most of these organizations, you find like Pricewaterhouse, they're not very geared with staff engagement. But when you look at the strategies that they have in terms of their staff engagement program, it is all about performance management. So if they just pick it and tweak it to fit their businesses. So for me, it's like, yes, I do embrace. It's very important for us to know what is happening in the global market. However, it's one day at a time. So what will work for us? Because the kind of people maybe you're talking with, the kind of management that you have in place, they're still in that old school. So it is up for you as a HR person to move them to get to where you want to get to. However, and the bottom line of this is to ensure that you have continuous conversation in terms of performance. Because at the end of the day, what you want to achieve is a performance management that works best for both the employee and for the organization to be able to achieve the objectives. And if you remember, there's something I talked about, the strategic understanding. You as a HR person, do you understand? And that's like most of these organizations, and that's why they're ahead of us. They think forward. We have a strategic plan of 5 years. Me as a HR person, I need to look at the strategic plan and ask myself, in 2023, I'm expected to achieve this. So what am I going to do in terms of managing the performance of my people so that by 2023, if you're supposed to be starting a new department, I don't go out there to hire. I'm going to look at the talent pool that I have, and I'm saying in 2023, since we're starting a new line of business, we'll have somebody internal. So I think it's just the way they're doing it that is different, but to some extent, I think even for us, you're doing it in small bits, maybe not in a very defined way, but I don't know. I hope I'm clear. I hope you guys are getting what I'm saying. We're doing it at it's the same kind of thing that we're doing. It's only that we're also evolving in a slower pace, but I believe with time we'll get where they are. Have I answered or have I tried to answer?
Yeah. Thank you, Irene, for that. What I've heard is about baby steps and what is suitable for you. I mean, you have to know your demographics and your culture to know what will best land, so long as you can meet your objective. Okay.
Any other question? Or maybe is anybody who'd want to put maybe one or two words in reference to what Jane was asking? Still open?
John Minor, I would want you to say something.
Actually, it's still morning. Good mornings. Yes,
Yes, good morning.
I used to attend these trainings a lot, but life changes people and this changes life. So that's why I wasn't so much logging in. This morning I logged in. At least I have been trained, let me say like 60-70%, because something came up in the office, then I had to leave and go and sort it out. But I'll just follow up on YouTube and subscribe and maybe ask questions in our group.
Very good. Very good, very good, very good. Now, I'm doing a roll call. I just wanted to see who just logged in and took off. Stella, can you say something? There is someone who has Galaxy Note 10 Lite. We never got to know the name. Okay. Robert Tokumu. Benjamin Kipsang.
Yeah, yes, thank you. I think the training has been an eye-opener to some of us who is practicing HR. Irene, she's really very good in this subject, but I know this subject sometimes is subjective at our work because initially, if you don't start right from the word, then you'll not get the support for the other staff. And okay, it's a process, as they say. We are still evolving in this subject, and I think with time we'll be there. We'll make it in future. Thank you, Irene, for this one. But we need to engage more employees, engage the top level management, engage also the government, because it's also. I think also we need to add again. We get to 810 degrees from 700, where we bring in the government and also international community, because it's still. It is still affecting our working processes within our companies in this country. So at least it's a process. We are going on well. Thank you very much. Did you hear me?
Yes, we did. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Asante sana. Now, Nekesa Omondi. Fine. So, someone else wants to say something?
Actually, I would like to appreciate Irene for the good presentation. I've been a bit busy at my workplace, and it's long since I attended that training, but now it is a wake-up call for me not to be staying for a very long time without the training. The challenges that she has talked about are faced at the institute where I work. And actually, I'm going to implement some of them so that I see a change. Otherwise, just to appreciate the organizers of this particular training. I'm so happy and I'm looking forward to attending more training. Thank you very much.
Okay, very well, very well. So let's do this. Let's have I would want to wish each and every one of you a very productive Saturday. Until we meet again next week on Saturday, we say thank you very much and have a good day.
God
Asante
bless.
sana.
Asante sana. Thank you. Bye.
You are able
everyone.
you'll be able to access your certificate on our LMS.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Irene, again.
Most welcome. Appreciated. Thank you, everyone.